and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Policy. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portion of this meeting is notified the superintendent's office of the desire to speak and be provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting will also be read and made part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our meetings on June 17th and June 27th.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of June 17th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, any corrections? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of June 27th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, any corrections on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Great, so we have no representatives yet. Any good news to share?
Well, we had an amazing 4th of July parade that we were all marching in. We've all survived, so I think that was a success. Very exciting.
And the candy made it almost.
And the candy made it
almost to the end.
almost to the end, but we had enough towards the end. And we had a bubble machine this year. I mean, that was a new addition to our repertoire. Dr. Lang really loves that.
Made my day.
One of his favorites.
There was so many
It brought joy to
families.
children behind him trying to get the bubbles. I thought it was great.
Yep, you did a good
It was a
job.
great- No, it was a great idea on his behalf.
The weather couldn't have been better.
Oh, it was
It was
beautiful.
a beautiful,
It was the
beautiful day.
best day of the summer so far.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, anybody else have any good news? Okay, I don't see any people to speak, so
No,
we'll
we
move
have-
on to new business.
Yep, we'll jump right into it because we do have a lengthy agenda tonight. We didn't have any public comments for before or after. So we're going to ask Linda to give us first couple items to kind of wrap up to last year, 24, 25, before we start getting into the next year. But Linda has a little academic update for us that she's going to walk us through.
Yeah, nothing sets up a meeting with, data. It's very exciting. So I know that we did have the DM group here at our last meeting, talking a little bit about our strategic plan and data. This is just going to give you at least a better overview of how we ended up with our internal benchmark system that we use, which is iReady, and how we fared as a district as a whole. So we're going to be taking a look at both the math and the reading, and this includes kind of our, what we use for placement data, comparisons to national and state benchmarks, and student goals for the year. So it's very helpful process for us as soon as we start to look into like our next year students' placement. Is there anything that we have to do and offer for services and stuff? So it's good to have the beginning and the end of the year in front of you. So we're going to start off with student performance and instructional outcomes using the iReady data, and we always start off with the math, and this is not by design by me, it's actually by design by iReady. They always start us off with the math, so maybe someday they'll switch it off with the reading first. So in this slide, we're just looking at the comparisons of our national and Massachusetts year-to-date benchmarks and how students performed in mathematics compared to how Chelmsford students performed. So in math, you'll notice that the overall Chelmsford scores are higher than the national and the math norms. That is very typical. We find this also with our state testing and MCAS, that we always score higher than the Massachusetts information and also nationally. So that's always a good thing. And then the next two slides, I'm going to be breaking it down. Oh, did that go over for you? Yeah, it did. This is just the comparison between Chelmsford students and the actual state averages and how we're performing base K through 8. So these next few slides are going to break it down by grade level to give you a better idea of like where do we see more success and in a grade level based on the state and nationally compared to other grade levels. And this is helpful information for us in general. And we take a look at it to see how we're doing from beginning to the end of the year, if it makes sense, and also spring to spring. So K through 1 is here. Grade 3 through 5 shows a strong proportion of students at or above grade level, with fewer students below grade level than the state and national averages. And then middle school math results reflect some similar trends that we've been seeing. Performance meets and exceeds benchmarks overall. So this is what we're used to seeing in Chelmsford based on that norm data. As we continue through, did that go through? Yep. Placement Attendance benchmarks, let's see. Is this not advancing for you? No, it is not.
No, it is. No, it is.
There we go. Hold on, I might be lagging, that's why I'm like looking up and then looking down. All right, here we go, spring to spring. So this is cross-sectional data, and it shows we're stable and, improvement placement levels over the past 3 years. So we're seeing that stability, but we're not seeing that movement on some of those lower ends. But in general, we tend to be stable, and we'd like to see those 3-year trends to see how students are actually performing. And when we break it down by the grade levels, we're seeing that most grades show that upward or consistent trend, especially in grades 2 and 3 that we're seeing. And remember, in math, we do have a new program that we've been using, so we expect to see some fluctuation, but it was actually nice to see in grades 2 and 3 a little bit of an uptick for those students that are in that darker green area than we've seen in previous years. And when you look at middle school, it's maintaining consistent placements. Grade 7 showed the most growth of that middle school of grade 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. However, we do need to take a little bit of that, look at that focus of that grade 7-8 transition and how the math instruction is being delivered, because we do see like a higher performance in grade 6. But then as we start to get to grade 7 and 8, where the math does become a little bit more complicated, and that's when you have your Algebra 1 courses, especially in grade 8, we do have to see, even though it's stable, why are we not seeing any movement in general beyond, 6th grade? 7th grade made that uptick, but 8th grade is another focus area that we have to take a look at. And we can talk a little bit about that further as we go through. Waiting for it to advance. Don't know why we're lagging today. There we go. Okay, let me go back one. There we go. I have to kind of push it forward to go forward. So this is data that captures individual student growth from fall to spring, and a significant amount of students have moved into grade level placement or higher. So now we're looking fall to spring, how are our students doing in math? So at the beginning of the year, they're being tested on end of the year data, like of their standards, and then are they making the movement that we'd like to see by the end of the school year and closing up that gap? So when we break it down by the grade levels, we're seeing some strong progress from fall to spring, particularly in grades 1 and 3. This year, they were the highest of the two. K knocked it out of the park. They did a great job. But when we're looking at the new program really kicking in, and when they start getting into school, and some of those harder concepts, that grade 1 and 3 actually made the most gains compared to the other grade levels. And then breakdown of these placement changes a little bit for grades 5 through 8. And although we see the gains from fall to spring, grade 5 and 6 show substantial improvement from fall to spring, with more students meeting grade level expectations. So we are still seeing that lower gain when we get to that grade 8 focus. And that has been part of our focus of our strategic plan and some of the work we've been doing. And we have to dig a little bit deeper in there to see what we need to do to push that movement forward. We're still trying to watch the students that have had gaps in their learning through COVID as well. So that is your 6th graders that are now going to be 7th graders. They were the ones that went home in kindergarten in 2020. I always have to go back and check.
No, that's 5th going to be 6th, because my son was one of them.
5th going to 6th. You know what it
Those
is?
were
I
in
actually
kindergarten.
follow the Murray kid. So she's going to 7th grade. So she must have been the first to come back for the hybrid.
Yeah, maybe.
Right,
Yeah.
so we are still good, we still have that group, they're coming, they're on their way, but we are still seeing some of those, gaps for those students, and hopefully we'll see those changes. So it's 5th to 6th.
So the kids going into 6th grade in the fall
were the
were in
ones that went
kindergarten
home
during
in
COVID.
Kindergarten in 2020.
Yeah,
Well, that's the year they got sent home
got
from
sent home.
kindergarten.
yeah.
But it's the kids going into 5th grade who
Correct.
had that
First
full
year
weird
of the
year.
hybrid,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
5 years ago, think about that. It is a little crazy, but I think we forget about that. I'm not saying that we're not gonna look deeper, but we do have to, that is in the back of our head of like, what happened to those kids and as they progress through. So we're gonna shift to reading, and we're gonna follow the similar structure that we did for the math review. And this is our placement for the national and state data as we go, it won't want to advance. I don't know why I'm lagging today. So this is what it looks like overall for the district in reading for the national and state data, and how our students are performing, again, performing higher than the national and the state norms. And then if we break it down by the grades, the primary grades show a high level of students at or above grade level, outperforming the state averages as per usual. And that's what we want to see, especially in those foundational years where they're getting those foundational skills that they need to solidify their reading as they go through the system. And that even includes grade 3. So I always consider the foundational years K through 3. I know some people think it's K through 2, but that third grade year is still a very important year for students when they're learning to read. So if you see, grade 3 stands out for a strong performance this year, which was great. And then you'll start to see that dip when we start getting again into those grade 7 and 8 years. That's where we see larger gaps as we go along, again, still higher than the state and the national averages. Just waiting for my lag to go forward. It doesn't want to go forward. There we go. Okay, so what does it look like spring to spring as a district in reading? Again, we showed some positive movement and some consistency in the reading and over the past 3 years, which is good. We want to make sure that our students are continuing to read and do well and move forward with their reading. And then if we start to look at this through the grade level, so again, this is 3 years of data, end of the year testing, okay? So it's not beginning to the end, it's how have they been performing for the past 3 years. So we're starting to see that grade 1 and 3, they've made like the larger gains along with kindergarten, and they're mirroring those math trends, which is great. We want to see that gap closing, and we want to see that darker green higher than, like the lighter green is still good, but darker green means they are, some of them are above the reading level, so that is excellent. And then as we progress through for those middle school years, again, we want to continue to focus on when they start that transition into grade 7. And as a former middle school teacher, I can tell you this is where, the rubber meets the road. It's keeping them engaged and making sure that reading is strong before they go to high school. So there are some areas that I believe we could be focusing on for grade 7 and 8 as we go along. Again, consistent, but consistently still a little bit of a gap. And then if we look at fall to spring and that longer review of the data, where you can see that obviously fall to spring, we are making the gains that we want to see from beginning of the year when they're tested at for end of the year standards compared to where they end at the end of the school year. And again, breaking it down by your grade levels. Let me see, this is not, that moved forward, right? Okay. We're starting to see, again, those formative grade levels, which is that K through 3, those students are making the gains that we're expecting to see, and then some in some of those grade levels, like grade 3, again, notably kindergarten, again, walking in, maybe not even having sight words, sounds, and their end of the year standards, they're hitting them, which is great. And then as we start to break it down again, we're starting to see grade 6 and 7 showing some improvement, and having that forward momentum that we need for those reading skills to be in place. So we're going to take a look at growth. So that we just looked at the performance. That's share, like how they answered the questions, how they did. That's performance-based. Now it's growth, because no matter where you are in your learning experience, are you making progress? Are you growing? Are the schools growing? So that's a very important part of the data that we look at. So if you look at the first graph, it compares the median growth and student performance by school. So you want to be in that upper quadrant of high performance, high growth. And you'll see that most of our schools met or exceeded typical growth expectations. I love that Center Elementary gets a little arrow there somewhere. They must be underneath the Harrington somewhere. They didn't get a full dot. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That came up a couple of times. So for mathematics, you'll see that we are in that high performance, high growth area that we're used to in Chelmsford. Some of them are teetering on those borders, but they're making that 1 year growth. And this is a little different from MCAS. When I talk about MCAS, 50 is 1 year growth. So that percentile is 50. This, because iReady works with multiple states and multiple performance areas, 100 is 1 year growth. So we've had 1 year growth, but then some of the schools have had 1 year growth and then some, which is great. You want to see it higher. But you definitely want to see at least a year's growth, which is very good. So just waiting for my lag and this to click over. I'm sure it's coming any moment as we speak. If I I could only sing in between, you'd have some music, but there we go. Okay. So district-wide, we are looking at 117% of typical growth, and which is consistent performance across the district. That grade 1 and 2 is on that 1-year growth. Like to see that a little bit higher, even that grade 3, but you at least want to have 1 year's worth of growth across the board for your grade levels. So we are focusing on 3 subgroups in our strategic plan, which is our special ed students, our L students, and our economically disadvantaged students. So I wanted to pull out that data for you to see what their growth looks like. So for special ed, the overall for the district, we're at 117%, but special ed, when you see yes next to it, that means those are students that are special ed. They're at 96%. Okay, so we're close to the 100% 1-year growth. That's great. However, in order to see gains, if you're a year behind or 2 years behind, you need to make 100% plus growth. So you need because otherwise you're just growing 1 year, you'll always be behind. You almost need a year and a half, which it's difficult to do, but we need to be focusing on that stretch growth because 1 year growth is always going to keep students behind, right? And the gap will widen. So 96, I guess we could, argue back and forth, we're almost at the 100%, but you would really want to see like 150%, even 130%, something more than 100 for those students to be able to close the gap, because otherwise they're going to continue going on with a gap.
Now, what's the no on that slide?
Yeah, so this gets a little confusing. So the way so everything goes into iReady through our student information system. So what is happening is special ed, yes, those are students that are currently on IEPs. The no is students that may have been on an IEP before and are now off of it. It's just, the system doesn't know how to pick it up as a clear yes and no. And then not reported is somebody who's never been
Is
on an
everybody else, yeah.
IEP. So when I actually do out the math, I have to do a weighted criteria to get the correct percentage. So when you see on the strategic plan, those percentages that I give you, like if it's 56, 76, whatever I'm giving you, I have to just do a weighted criteria for special ed.
Okay.
Because it's just the way our system works. It's how it's reported to the state, so we can't change it. So the no is just a student. So out of the district, there may have been 467 students that were on an IEP or recommended or parents pulled them off. And they are no longer a special ed student, but they were part of special ed at some point.
Okay.
So very, very simple to do, but I have to do that math. You'll also see that for economically disadvantaged as well. So English learner, you either are or you're not. So again, great. We're seeing 107% growth, right? In mathematics, we'd want to see a little bit more if they were behind. You want to see that stretch growth so that we can move them even more forward. So we don't see that 43% in the 1 year below grade level, right? So if you want to push those kids forward, there has to be more growth than a typical 1 year growth at 100%. And then for economically disadvantaged, again, you see that no part, that means that they may have been at some point. Yes, they're making 100% growth, 1 year growth, but the 34% and is really, that's a bulk of our students are in that part. So we'd want to see them making even more growth than the 100%.
Is this the first year we pulled out these particular?
No, this is our second year.
Could it be interesting to see how this was year to year?
Yep,
Is this-
so we'll know after next year, we'll have 3 times. So when we originally did this, we didn't give iReady the access to our SIS like that because we didn't want students to be identified. But then as we started putting the strategic plan together, and then we really wanted to break down the numbers instead of pulling kids on a separate spreadsheet and trying to do it that way, we gave them the access to the students for them to pull it for us.
Okay,
So
so,
after this next school year, so 25, 26, we will have 3 years of data.
and then we can compare them year to year?
Correct.
Okay.
We'll have the trend, it's a trend. I
Yep.
mean, we could pull 2 years, but a trend is anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
And under the strategic plan, this is the second year, I believe, that, there's more access to iReady by the special ed students.
Correct. We gave them the access to the special, for our economically disadvantaged, our special ed students and our L students. Because those are our 3 big subgroups as a district. We have specialized reports for ourselves, like I have a Title I report, because I need that to report to the state for Title I, but we don't have them pull it in this fashion. We actually give them the students, because that changes. Some students may follow the Title I services, some may not. They ebb and flow in there, so that's a moving target. This is pretty steady. So this is our second year with that information.
Thank you.
Okay, so same format we're gonna go through for reading. When you look at reading for the district, again, it's great, high performance, high growth. Harrington Elementary School got the little arrow this time, maybe they have to sit in the center. They must be neck and neck, those schools tend to be neck and neck in a lot of things. But it's great to see that we're in that higher part of the high performance and high growth for reading. And when you look at the district in general, we have 135% typical growth in reading, which is great. It's a very positive result. That 8th grade is lagging, which is actually the same as math, like for math. So it seems to be running concurrently together. And that is definitely one of our focus grade levels that we have to find out what exactly is going on. And is it in fiction or is it in nonfiction? What is part of it seems to be in comprehension, because it's not in phonics and phonemic awareness. We know they have their foundational skills, but what is it when it comes to the comprehension that they're not picking up? Is it academic vocabulary? What is it? So we're gonna have to dig into that a little bit further. And then when we look at special education, when it comes to that growth, we have the district at 135%, special ed 113. Again, it's great to see it higher than 100%, but we'd want to see it a little bit higher to try and close that gap up for those kids that are a year to 2 years behind. Same for L students, right? We're seeing, that's great that they have 131%. That's excellent, but again, in order to really move the needle, we'd have to increase it for some of those students that are in that year to year behind.
Can you
Yes.
go back to the Ls
Yes.
for a second? So in this scenario, just to make sure I'm fully understanding, the no's are, in this case, this is just anyone who is not identified as L. This is
Correct.
not people who were previously and are not
Correct.
anymore.
You can't be, you're either identified as an L or you're not. So there's no, like, I was on an IEP, now I'm not on an IEP. I may have been economically disadvantaged, I'm not anymore. You're either an L or you're not an L. So the data is clean.
But by that definition, is somebody termed an L if they are currently receiving ESL or other services? Or does that include people whose first language wasn't necessarily English, but who are
Yeah, it's only
now
the
attain
students that are
fluency?
receiving ESL
Okay,
services.
thank you.
They're not like FLEPs or anything like that.
And to understand this percentage, so the no's is everybody else?
That's all the other students, that's not an L student.
So it's an actual comparison?
Yeah, this is very clean data for us.
So for growth perspective, there's actually pretty similar growth between students who
Yeah, which is-
do and do not.
That's great. And then economically disadvantaged, and again, some people may be in two of these categories, right? Like you could be an L student that's special ed, you could be an L student or an economically disadvantaged student that's also has a IEP. So it gets a little, complicated. But when we see the students, at least as a district, we're higher than the 100%, that's great. I like the 121, love to see it at 150. It's hard. That stretch growth is really hard to access. And that really comes down to like the instructional level. So when you're with your students, you're looking at, because teachers have this for their students. This drills down. So if I open up my class, I can see how everybody's doing. So that helps me with my groupings too. I would be like, these are the kids I really actually have to, pull together and do some additional support. Or if they were going to go into intervention, these are the students that we'd pull and provide intervention for. So although we're seeing it at a district level, it goes all the way to the school level, then it goes all the way down to the classroom level. So this is not like elusive information that nobody has access to. And that is my last slide, and I'm happy to answer questions, go back. It gets complicated between this, and then MCAS has their own way of coming out with how they present their data. So we try to stick with those two to keep it simple.
Any questions?
So in trying to figure out what's happening at that 8th grade level, what are we doing? What, in addition to whatever we're doing with the strategic plan? So what else would you now do?
So they would have to do very slow. So now that students, they've moved on to the high school, right? So now you have your students
Right.
coming up. What they will have to do is look at, is there like a common area that the students are not doing well? So even within iReady, we can drill it down to like the standards. So we could look at certain standards that students aren't doing well with. And what they'd have to do is additional lessons to support that. So I would be looking, if I had my students, so this is the team sitting down together, so the 8 teachers, right? We have 8 teachers, sitting together and saying, okay, we're seeing something common. I'll come up with some more lessons here. Let's go into our program and see like what they suggest for this. And then you would be providing them with extra support. They might be in need to be in a small group. They might be receiving reading services if it's reading, right? So it's a matter of looking at the students and actually coming up with additional support lessons, because they may already know something else, so you don't have to focus on that for as much, and you would shift over to something else that they have to do.
So these 8th graders are now all dispersed throughout the high school, deciding to take different classes and all of these things. So it's not the same as catching them when they're in the 6th and the 7th grade. So examining those lessons, do we now bring it down to the next 2 grade levels? Okay, let's say the comprehension is the problem. If comprehension is the problem, to solve that comprehension problem, we probably need to start 2 or 3 grades before to figure out what's going on.
Correct. You might, or you may, it depends. It depends on how they're instructing the students. Right, because the content gets more difficult. For those high schoolers that are going in, they might be in the reading for high school class. So they're not just, go to high school, good luck, sorry, so you didn't make it. There is a reading for high school class that they would have, that they would work, they would probably be assigned to those classes.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the specific students and see, who received
it
what.
is.
But if it is, right, if we see like a problem that's vertically aligned, right, if it's because in ELA, it's a little bit easier because the standards are the same standards. You have your strands, your 4 strands. So if there's a problem, you can actually vertically align it, unlike the math where it's concrete sequential. So they would really have to go back 2 years to be able to make sure those students had something, some type of skill that they needed, because they won't be able to go forward. So if they see something large, they would all be working on that. So it's not just just 8th grade. But we're noticing that if you look back on the trends, when we did the 3-year comparison, 8th grade was, yes, stable, but stable low. So
Right,
I would be looking specifically at grade 8 right now.
right. So, and it's been consistent. I don't remember a year of sitting here and looking at test results and performance results at the end of the year where the 8th grade is not always a problem.
So I don't think
So-
it's 2 years before I would be
Yeah.
looking at 8th grade,
Because-
particularly in how the service delivery
Right,
is.
because I often hear from parents, when years ago, it seems like eternity now, when my girls were going through middle school, it was wonderful to go get books and do all the hard actual books to read
Yep.
and understand and all of that. Now, everybody is on an iPad, or that's how they're reading. And I just don't think it's as easy to track what a person is reading or not reading, or, what they've decided to do with reading at that age group because of the digital part of it.
Yeah, we still have, the good news is, we still have books. We actually use.
Oh, I know we
use
have actual
novels.
books.
We don't ask them to read off of the computer.
Right.
We actually have the actual novel.
Which is great, but extra reading, when they come home and they want to read, just for the sake of reading, and there are some students who really love that. But they don't do it anymore. Most
They
students,
get on their device.
it's all on a device and it's on the phone and so on. So thinking about that and having had Bill's presentation and so on with technology, one of the things is the kids who are disadvantaged economically, or even the EL students who might need that equipment during the summer or when they go home at night, instead of it in a classroom for the elementary kids, having access to it, I think becomes really important. And then thinking about that in line with what's coming up here with the federal funding and cutting it from those programs that really impact these kids, it's even more scary. So I think going back a couple of grade levels and saying, okay, this consistently seems to be the problem for the readers, comprehension, let's say it's one of them. And I think also with comprehension, these kids are less focused. The way that they learn is more all over the place. They're doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. Can't have silence or any of that stuff. So even that makes it more difficult. So we got to begin way back in the middle school thing, I think.
I mean, I wonder also, I definitely hear what you're saying. I wonder, I was trying to think of like what distinguishes 7th and 8th grade and it seems to be specifically, I mean, both math and reading. It's not limited to reading. So I think it's more than just devices or how the students are reading, although that's probably a factor. As they get older, they're more likely to have different temptations, let's say, with their time too. But I am thinking about, I wonder if there has been any more macro look at the structure of the schedule at that age group. And I don't know if there's been some comparison between before and after the transition. We've talked about this before. And if we've looked at how many minutes of instruction students are receiving in reading and math in particular, the way that the 8th grade and even 7th grade schedule is structured, if there's any ways that we need to rethink some of the kind of macro design to just ensure that students are getting the time to make the kind of growth that they need to make.
I want to add one thing, though, to piggyback on what Maria said about the devices themselves. You look at it as, does everyone have equal access? That's one piece of it. But I know that there's been a lot of research about the effect of reading, say, a novel on a device and its effect on your comprehension compared to reading it in a book. For instance, if you're learning about the sequence of a story, if you're reading a novel, you can literally say, first of all, you can see where you are. Are you in the middle or are you at the end? In a device, you don't know where you are. You're just on the page they're showing you. When you have a novel, you can also check back. They said something about that character, probably about this part in the book, and you can go look at it. You can't find that on a device either. So if the older they get, the more they're reading on a device, the less they're able to access some of the comprehension strategies that people use when they have a physical book in their hand. So that might be just something, as they get older, they're using devices more often, and it is helping them. Now, it doesn't explain 3 grades below. That's a bigger issue to look at. But it's not just the access to the devices.
It's also how.
It's the very fact that reading on a device lowers your comprehension level for anyone.
I think there's also a way to teach students how to use the tools in front of them to read things in multimedia formats. And that may be something to look at as time goes by and more students are using multimedia ways of looking at literature. Because I know there's a lot of really great digital tools to support students, sort of from a UDL perspective and with comprehension more broadly, that I don't necessarily think students know how to use. I've only recently discovered some of them, and I think, as time goes by, if that is going to be a big way that students are consuming text outside of the direct instruction they're getting in school and their explicit homework, it may be helpful so that they can better maximize the time that they're reading on devices too.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the report? Nope. All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you heard, today there was a report out about the level of Massachusetts education. We got rated again as #1 in the country, which is great. And this report overall is a good report. There's no question, but it's just thinking about ways of making it even better for all the kids, which is great. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. It's nice to kind of take a look at that data. Obviously, we'll take another look at it when we get the MCAS results later on this summer and fall. But we always try to kind of bookmark and kind of close out 24, 25 before we start looking forward to next year and some of the things we might be looking to take a peek at. So thank you for that, Linda. Second up tonight is the, just a little year in review summary. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. What we do each year is actually produce a little kind of highlight memo, and this actually goes into the town meeting book. You know, when we go to town meeting in the fall and the spring, it just kind of shares with the town meeting reps and the community some of the different things that we worked on over the course of the year. None of it's going to be really new to you, but just to touch on the this past fiscal '25 budget, which Joanne is actually just closed, so you'll get a final report at the next meeting. We'll do a preliminary one tonight. But we had another very good, strong financial year, fiscal '25. We're again finishing in the black, and we've been able to put together some reserve funds to help us in future years. So our circuit breaker fund is going to have approximately $3.5 million in it at the end of the year, which again is a contrast to some years back. We do have that special ed reserve fund that we created and initially funded a few years back. We haven't put new monies in it over the last couple of fiscal years, but just the interest in the fund itself has continued to grow, so that's at about $822,000. Nancy, when she was in here in June to do the year-end review in food services, they've obviously been increasing their breakfast sales, increasing their lunch sales, which generates additional revenue to us, and we've been able to use some of that revenue to offset some of the cost of capital projects, which is helpful, but they have a healthy fund balance of about $3.8 million at the end of the fiscal year, which is great compared to a lot of other districts' food service programs. And then our school choice funding, which we do earmark each year in the budget to offset the cost of the one-on-one initiative, is still kind of like a reserve fund for the school committee, and that's going to stand at about $3.2 million for next year. So all in all, we finished fiscal '25 on a very positive note, down to the penny, as Joanna will report at the next meeting. The money has been spent and accounted for, and then we start to shift to next year. And as you know, we had a little bit of a tighter budget going forward for fiscal '26 than we'd had in previous years. But when we went to town meeting this past spring, town meeting was very supportive and did approve the additional almost $8 million to support our budget, which will be at $75.5 million for next year. I think the positive piece about the '26 budget, it definitely maintains the services and supports that we have kind of grown accustomed to, and some of the incremental improvements and enhancements we've tried to make in programming through our strategic plan in '26. So I'm looking forward to continuing that work. But we're starting the year in solid shape. I know it was just a couple of weeks ago, but just to highlight again, the importance, and I think also just the ability for us to actually ratify all 4 of our contracts before we got out of the school year, so that we really head into these next 3 years with contracts in place. Oftentimes, if you don't have a contract in place, it can be somewhat of a distraction as you're getting into the summer and school year. But I think the negotiations really with the different units went very well. The feedback I received from each of them when they ratified overwhelmingly. The staff was appreciative of the school committee's work on each of those contracts. And again, it doesn't often happen, but being able to settle and ratify all 4 of those contracts for us was a huge thing, and really sets us up on a positive note going into next year. A lot of our work this past year was really around setting ourselves up for the new school building project. So as you recall, it was back in December of '23 that we initially got invited into the eligibility period for the MSBA, and we had the 8 different deliverables that we had to come through on by the end of December of '24. We were able to actually do that, and we got it done early, including the vote of town meeting in the spring of '24 to fund the $1.8 million feasibility study. So we got that done, and then we kind of shifted into feasibility. So the MSBA board actually invited us in earlier. We weren't supposed to go until January, but they took us in December, invited us into the feasibility study. In the first 2 major components of the feasibility study, the first one was getting an OPM on board, and we had a procurement process, and we were able to hire Left Field to be our OPM. They've been outstanding. We have a school building committee that's now meeting regularly to get that work underway. The next big step is the designer. We have to hire the designer or the architectural firm that's going to help guide the work. And the proposals closed last week. We received 6 proposals from 6 very qualified firms for that work. So we're going to be going to the MSBA designer review panel at the end of August. and then we're going to have some interviews probably the first week or second week of September. So by mid-September, we should have the designer on board. So those are the two major elements that happened between last spring and kind of going into the fall. And then I really do think right after probably Columbus Day weekend, and for the latter part of the next school year, it's going to be getting into the true work of the options-based review. So we've got the 3 different options to look at. We've got the 1-for-1 replacement, a 2-grade level school for Parker. We've got a 3-grade level school configuration of grade 4, 5, and 6. And then we have kind of the mega middle school option of going back to a combined grade 5 to 8 school. So all 3 of those will be vetted next fall. There'll be a lot of opportunity for staff and family and community input. That'll again start in the fall. And our goal will be by the end of next school year to really pick which of the 3 options we want to explore as a town and get ready for the next step in the process of getting the approvals, getting schematic design underway, and ultimately still looking forward to a spring of '27 vote to hopefully approve that project and keep us in play. So those 2 items really did take up a significant amount of time. They were both tied to the work of the facility and operations goal of the strategic plan. Good work, just very time consuming and obviously setting us up for future success. We did have the Ed Davis Group back in because safety and security is still an utmost concern of ours. So that group had come out to do some assessments of our buildings and our practices and policies back in 2022. So over the last 2 years, we've actually implemented quite a number of the recommendations of their review. One being the secure entrances to the schools, another being the district-wide radio system that we're all on right now. So we decided to have them come back this past spring before we went out to do the additional 5 secure entrances to take a look at the 2 we had done, give us some critiques and recommendations. And then we also had them on site when we did our final set of ALICE options-based response drills at the schools to, again, be kind of a third party to watch us as we're working. So we were able to debrief with them afterward, and hopefully they'll be joining us this summer when the admin get together to do our retreat before we get into the course of the next school year and continue to just refine our safety procedures and protocols and responses. But they've been a very good partner. And then as this group knows, because many of you are on the steering committee, but our work this last year, the 3rd year of the 5-year strategic plan, was again guided by district management group. We have 5 different priority areas. Our working group met every 6 weeks to update each other with regard to the progress we've made on all of the different initiatives. And that's been reported out mid-year and then at the end of the year with TM Group. And lastly, another big project for us, obviously, was our work under the equity area with paraeducator, the refinement of the paraprofessional roles and responsibilities. We had a very good, productive working group that came together to work on that, and we're going to continue to roll that work out next year as well. But those were some of the major items that we really focused on as a committee and as an administration this past year. And I, again, just kind of transmit that to you, and ultimately it'll be incorporated into that town meeting booklet to just share with the community what our focus was this past year as we start to look going forward to next year.
Okay, any questions or comments? I was going to say this at the end, but I guess a good time. A reminder that we're also in the process of evaluating the superintendent, and this is always a good document to use in going through that evaluative process of what's gone over the past couple of years, last year or so. And so if you can use that as a tool, you can talk to the superintendent individually if you have any specific questions. And if you can get that in by the end of the month, then we can get it ready for our first meeting in August.
Yeah, I'll transmit the documents and everything to you tomorrow. I know you look forward to this every year. So I'll get that out to you, tomorrow.
He's looking at me specifically on this.
Because I know you don't like it.
The form itself.
The form,
Yeah, the form
yeah.
itself is a
hate
bit.
that form.
I don't either.
It's a funky, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, and I will send that out to you. Use this individually. If you'd like to meet with me, I'm more than happy to talk to you and give you any input I can. And we'll wrap that up. And then at the next meeting, really start kind of focusing on 25, 26.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm looking forward to
E
the
plus.
form.
I know.
All right.
All right, next up, I'm going to ask Juliana to review a couple of items with us. We have the preliminary fiscal '25, the year that just ended on June 30th, preliminary report.
Thank you. This
is our preliminary quarterly update. And as the superintendent said, we'll have the final numbers at the August meeting. So you have a brief memo about our budget for fiscal '25, which was $73,880,000. You have the year-to-date budget report detailing all the spend in the different DESI categories. You have a grant and revolving fund summary, and then you have the 3 student activity accounts, the high school and the 2 middle schools. So we've talked about all the variances throughout the year, and the committee reallocated some of the funds due to favorable variances to a couple major things: the one-time purchases, prepaying special ed out-of-district tuitions, and then we did set up some more reserve funds that the superintendent talked about in school choice primarily. At the preliminary number is, we spent, 73 million. We have about 800,000 in open encumbrances. And at the time this report was run, we were, still had $256 available. The town accountant and the treasurer and everybody is working to, I believe they finished with all the posting to the ledger today. So that number at the next report will be 0, will be fully expended. We will still have about 800,000 in open encumbrances, and that's primarily the one-time purchase items. At the June 17th school committee meeting, we said our intent was to spend the full budget, and really we just made 2 entries that I hadn't presented yet to the meeting, the committee, and one was to fund the one-to-one computer initiative from the local operating budget rather than school choice. So that was one entry we made. And then the other was to fund a little more coaching stipends from the local budget rather than the athletic revolving fund. So any questions on the operating budget? The next page is the grant and revolving fund summary. This won't change too much in the final report. It was just some of the revenue that came in on the grants at the end of June. Hadn't posted yet in the ledger. So that will be really the only change. We knew what the expenses were, and that number won't change. I do want to point out that a new item on this report we talked about earlier on the second page was the funds we received for the Princeton.
Development.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So that is on the second page. I have a line item under 503 gifts and donations, 255 Princeton Street Development. That's the 180,000 in revenue we received. So that's where I'll be reporting that if we choose to put any expenses against there in the future. Any questions on the grants and revolving funds?
Just more a general question. I know last year, at the end of the year, we got extra money through circuit breaker.
Yeah.
Is that something that we might get, might not get, don't know?
We know.
Okay.
And I'll report that more. We do, on the bottom part of the first page,
Yeah.
I could see that the circuit breaker, the fourth quarter payment of $822,268 came in on the end of June.
Okay.
But it just hadn't posted yet. That $822 is slightly higher than what we were expecting.
Okay.
But then there was language that said it doesn't go towards your one-year cap.
Okay.
That
That was
diff-
why I was asking the question,
Right.
yeah.
So that little difference, it's not that little, it's like 26,000. You can carry into the following year.
Okay.
So I have a little way I keep track of all this because that cap is very important. And then I can present it.
Okay, yeah, because it looked like the number we're carrying was fairly high.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly right.
Great.
Okay. And then the student activity balances, it's just our standard reports by club or team, and this was through May. The high school is at about 244,000, McCarthy 46,000, and Parker a little greater than 81,000. So any questions on the student activity balances?
All looks good. As usual, great job.
Yep, and like I said, I'll present the final
Okay.
at the next meeting, and we'll put that up on the website.
Okay. Do we don't have to vote anything yet? Wait till the final one closes. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you're up again, I think.
And the next is a report on the federal grants. And you saw this format at the May 25th school committee meeting. And I just added a column to say what we know about fiscal year 2026. So we have 7 federal grants, and then the food service reimbursement from the USDA is also federal. So I don't have any exact dollar amounts yet. I just have what the commissioner put out, which is for the entitlement grants, which is Title I, SPED IDEA, and there's a little SPED, early childhood SPED IDEA. Those they're saying are going to be consistent level with previous years. But I don't have a number. I will say, though, that the Title I amount of $419,000 for fiscal '25 was the highest it had ever been for us. So if we get that again, that would be wonderful. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than 419. And then all of the other ones, so Title IIA, Title III, Title IV, and then a SPED program improvement grant, the words they used were uncertain, delayed, and under review. So we're expecting it to be most likely 0. But for right now, we're just using the language that is being communicated with us, that the state knows based on the Fed.
So consistent with the previous years means we're being funded for it?
We expect to be funded for it,
Expect.
but we
okay.
haven't received a number yet, and the grant applications haven't opened up yet.
And say the uncertain ones don't come through at all, do we have the capacity to pay for those programs that those are funded by through other means, through other grants or through the general budget or?
So I guess I would look at it that on a positive note, the 2 big ones, the Title I and the IDEA grants, which is like our special ed grant, those are the big ones for us. Those do look like they are going to be funded. It's just a little bit of a wait until we're able to actually access the funds and do the application. So I'm not hugely concerned with those. So that was good because we didn't know which was going to be happening. Those ones that are listed, approximately 200,000-ish or so, are that uncertain. I would not plan on getting. I think in the end, those are grants that are going to end up being withheld. Originally, I thought that this was going to be the case, even when we were talking with other local superintendents. Federally, it had been kind of messaged that these would be the grants that would be targeted to not be funded a year from now, because the federal government's off cycle from us funding-wise. So this money for these grants has already been like budgeted. They're just not releasing it. We assumed that it just wasn't going to get budgeted in next year's budget, like our fiscal '27 budget. But what they're basically doing is withholding the money now. So I thought we were going to have an extra year to kind of plan for that, but it seems like we're going to have to plan for it now. Yes, what will end up happening is, again, very happy that Title I and the IDEAs look like they'll be funded. We're going to proceed as if they're going to be. The others, we obviously have to go back at, take a look at service-wise. What was being done that's absolutely critical to being done? Can what was being done on those grants be done, anywhere else in the district? So we're going to monitor that over the next week or two. There very well may be, like sometimes if we had tutors or interventionists and things like that, I wouldn't recommend probably to you at this point that we just reallocate local funds to pay for that, because ultimately that would be deficit budgeting on the local side. And so we're going to have to just take a real hard look at, what those funds were supporting. Are there ways in the local budget to fund them, as opposed to just saying we're going to earmark another $200,000 and replace it? Because that would be basically trying to find another $200,000 before we even started our budgeting process for '27. But we'll know more as we come. It's not great news, but it's not devastating to us, programming-wise, if those don't come through.
Is Massachusetts a state that, I think there's some litigation going on, suit has been filed already, right? We're one of these states.
There's a lot of litigation going on.
Right.
I think, for all practical purposes, and just how long it takes for litigation to be, actually litigated and then appealed and things along those lines. And part of the whole process may also just be stall tactics, so that you get to such a point where you can't use the funding anyway because the cycles would run out. It's certainly something that the Superintendent's Association is monitoring. I know the School Committee Association is monitoring them as well. So we're getting alerts, we're getting updates, we're participating in meetings to kind of hear what's happening with it. The new Commissioner of Education just came on board July 1st. One of the first things he did his first week was actually have a conference call with a superintendent group to kind of inform them of what DESE was doing with it. How, they were going to be internally planning to go forward with the grants that look like are going to be funded, the Title I, the IDEA, which is great. That obviously they're looking at their avenues with the Attorney General's office on what they can do to try to, fight for some of the other funds. I just don't know, how successful that's going to be or how timely it's going to be based on when we have to make decisions about what to spend, what not to spend. But I'll continue to monitor it for you. If we get any updates or alerts, I'll shoot you a quick email, but, Joanna can always throw an updated memo on a future packet if we have to, and keep this kind of front and center of the discussion.
Any other questions? And just one other, given that one of these grants has to do with school nutrition, and I don't know what they did in the state budget, is this going to impact do we have to have students pay for lunches and breakfast next fall, or?
We don't know yet,
Okay,
so just to remind everybody, it's two reimbursements, one from the federal, one from the state. And this past year, those two covered everything, and there was no cost to families. We don't know the formula for reimbursement for the federal monies yet. And that was the big number. That was $925,000 in fiscal '25. In the state budget, there was a state contribution. And that wasn't part of, I'm sure you all read the little 5-page summary of the vetoes. But since that hasn't been finalized, in theory, someone could change that. So I'm not making any grand announcements tonight that it's at no cost to families. We'll just wait until the state budget is finalized to see what the funding formula is. And just a reminder, what it used to be, before it was no cost to families, there was, free, reduced, and paid. And that's how it was for years and years and years. So as soon as we know, we'll bring it to the committee and.
and a bigger picture, state budget, they give more for minimal aid than they originally projected, is that true?
Yeah, so
What impact, if any, does it have on us or on the town?
it's not going to have any direct impact on like the Chelmsford Public Schools
Yeah.
operating budget for next year. But what it does is gives a little bit more in Chapter 70 than like Paul and I were anticipating.
Right.
So it would basically build a little bit of a cushion, for next year. We would hope then, if, depending on how the budget talks go for next year, maybe that will be the baseline to then move off of for the following year, because we had really kind of budgeted
Yeah.
a low number
Okay.
coming in for Chapter 70. But when, it's not going to affect us for like this coming school year.
Yeah.
But we'll monitor that. We'll make a note of it when we have tri-board in December. We certainly can talk about it. I think it's good news, obviously, that it's going to help a little bit. But where our budget is already kind of set for this year,
Yeah.
we don't typically go back unless there's like an emergency.
Right.
and do
I just
like
didn't
a
know how
budget.
it would impact the town and that, how, yeah.
It's going to be helpful to
Yeah,
the town
okay.
because it's basically a surplus.
Yeah,
Right? So
okay.
there's extra revenue that came in that wasn't earmarked.
Right.
So it's going to be.
Went up from 30 to 150 or something, I forget what the difference was.
No, it was, I want to, this is ballpark, I
Yeah.
can get you the exact numbers. I want to say it was originally at like $40 a student in the governor's budget. And then, yes, it went up closer to like 150.
Okay.
Overall. So it was almost like 3 times what we were thinking. I think we were originally thinking it was going to be in the high twos or around $300,000. And it ends up being 700 and something thousand.
Okay, so it's
it's a substantial
significant, yeah.
increase.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number, but I can email it to you.
Yep.
And it will be something to watch on for next year.
Okay.
So, in that line of question, let's say that we don't get this federal funding for some of these items that are really important to us because they impact those groups who we're talking about, right, and their performance. If that happens and we have that much more money this year in Chapter 70 funding, we don't typically go back. But if we had to, is that a possibility?
You can always have the conversation. I think what we need to do is really kind of quantify what, when we get the final numbers on the federal funding, we need to quantify what that loss is or where the gaps are and what we can't satisfy in the local budget. Because even if we were to allocate, let's just say the number's 200,000. If we were to try to find $200,000 in our budget, then again, that's just starting from a $200,000 hole as we build the next year's budget.
Right.
If we allocated or asked for some of that additional money to be incorporated now, and it were, that might help us in the short term, but that's adding another $200,000 into our base budget for the following year. So it's going to have the same effect. You're basically adding another $200,000 of potential deficit into your budget going forward for '27. So we just need to be very conscious of like what isn't being funded or what we can't, cover in the current budget that we've been appropriated. Because I just don't want to dig ourselves into a bigger hole
yeah.
now as we're starting to look at budgeting, because we're going to be starting the budget in the fall, September, October, for the coming year.
Yeah,
But we'll have those talks.
okay.
Great. Any other question on the report? Okay, thank you, Joanna. That's great.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. Okay, the next couple of items for you were just some results I wanted to share, just preliminary results on the survey that we did right at the end of the school year before staff and students left for the summer. So I know several of the committee members, including Diana, was really kind of a push for this, to take a look at some data around student cell phone use and social media use, so that we could have some data to be able to start a conversation this summer and obviously into next school year. I think I had mentioned at a previous meeting, and, we still plan to do some work with Jill Walsh, who's a professor at Boston University who really focuses in this area. So I reached out to her to just say, before we actually create like our own survey, if we're looking to get some quick information on kind of where people stand for the time being, what would we have? So she actually had some surveys, which the other nice thing about her surveys is where they've been used in multiple communities. We obviously don't have it now, but we can actually take a look at our responses against like regional and then any kind of national responses to the similar surveys she received from other districts. So we can kind of triangulate on some of the data from that. But we wanted to try to get a sense for how do teachers feel about student cell phone use and social media in the schools, and then a separate survey it was targeted towards parents. We certainly got some parents, because it was an open survey, some kids took the survey as well, so that's not quite as pure as the one that went to the staff, because we can control the staff who received the email. The other one was like a broadcast email that anyone could have logged into. But we got very good responses, and tonight my goal is to kind of walk you through just some of the overarching responses we got to the questions. In the end, under each of the different surveys, what we did was take an initial kind of grouping of the responses And there were several questions that both staff and parents were asked to respond to in a narrative form if they wanted to. It wasn't just like a checkbox. So we summarized those responses globally by kind of all responses, and then we summarized them by level, so by elementary, by middle, and by high school, because things varied a little bit. To at least have there be some data to, again, be kind of grounded in, have it as we start to have the discussion moving forward. So the first one I'm going to walk you through is on the teacher end. On the first slide, we got a good response from teachers, and again, this was just a couple weeks prior to the close of school. So we had 240 teachers respond to this, and you can see their distribution, grades pre-K through 12. Cell phones don't seem to be a huge issue with chips. So I was very, very happy to see that. But we got good responses. I will say some of the teachers who responded, even at the younger grade levels, like the chips and the K1, where cell phones obviously aren't an issue, they responded from a parent lens because they have kids in the school system and whatnot. We asked them which school they currently work, and again, this data, it's a lot of data. We have not been able to go even deeper and kind of break the responses up specifically by school, but the data is there for us to be able to do that going forward. You can see who actually responded to the survey. They were asked some examples of digital platforms that kids may be using during the school day. They were asked, how often do you think they're using them? Always, sometimes, rarely, right down the line, so you can kind of get a teacher perspective on what type of platforms, whether it be, being on YouTube or video game or, Instagram, things like that during the school day. And the first real question they were asked to respond to was, do you think students' phone use is a problem at your school? 42% said yes, they think phones are a problem during the school day. 28% said no, they don't think they're a problem. And then, 28.3 said, I think phones might cause problems for some students during the school day. So there was a big mix, and again, this is additional data that over time we can kind of dig a little bit deeper into, because again, when you're going to see the narrative responses, because after each of these big questions, they were given an opportunity to provide a narrative, you can obviously see, like, cell phones aren't a huge issue. I was joking earlier, but like at Westlands and even at the elementary school level, it's more at that level. It's like the smartwatches and things like that that are problematic. But as you get into middle school and high school, the cell phone being an issue certainly was more prevalent. They were asked, do you know what the phone usage guidelines are from the student handbook? 76% said yes, they do. 58% said no, they don't. Do you think students know? This is asking the teachers what the phone guidelines are. And this was less, and I would assume based on use. But they responded, about 30% said yes, I think students do know. Almost half said no, I don't think they know. And a quarter of them also were unsure if they knew or not. Another slide about, do you know the social media policy outlined in the school committee policy manual? Half said yes, a third said no, another 20% or so said unsure. Do you think school addresses technology issues that arise with students effectively? Again, this is kind of a mixed bag in a response. 32% said yes. 43% said mixed, and then they were also able to give a response in a narrative form to why they felt the way that they did. And then the big question, and again, this is actually, there's some state legislation that's pending right now that we're watching very closely, but the Attorney General's office did file legislation to basically have there be a bell-to-bell ban on students' access to cell phones during the school day. So this is something we're watching. And they said, just to teachers even outside of that, would you support a cell phone ban for students during the school day? Overwhelmingly, 76.7% said yes, 18% said they need more information, and a handful said no, they wouldn't support that. They were then asked, if there was a ban to be in place, when do you think it should be? Because there's a lot of discussion about, over half said like bell to bell, they shouldn't even be there. Others said just during academic time itself. Others would support a ban during like academic time, but like in a public space in the building, like during lunch or something like that. They didn't have an issue with kids having access to phones. So truly kind of a mixed bag. Majority supported or vast majority supported having there be some type of a ban, but I think depending on what the ban would actually look like or when it would be implemented is where the discussion point comes. And then the question for the teachers, do you think students having access to the phones during the day impacts morale? And 63.7% said yes, 12% said no, and a quarter of them didn't know. So on this one, again, we did get actually, I thought a very good teacher response, just knowing that it was that last week in, before school actually got out. Teachers were very thoughtful in their narrative responses, and sometimes you put a survey out and people will answer the click questions, but they don't take the time to answer the, whatchamacallit, the narrative questions, but the teachers here actually did. So in the memo that I provided you behind the PowerPoint, just so you can have this, and then at the end of this, I'm open, and I would love to hear your opinions. I plan to send this information, because it's a public record, out to the staff myself to just let them know this was kind of the results of what the survey was. Here are the slides. Here's also some of the questions and summary information. On the parent side, I think it would also be valuable to send a link to the survey, because I have had a few parents ask me, we took the survey, what are the results? I could send a message out to the parents, just say, thank you very much for responding. Here's the summary. This is the information the school committee and the administration will be looking at over the next, number of months as we take a look at this process. But I'd love to get your feedback on if you think that would be a good exercise to go through. But again, and I broke this down for you so you can actually just see the responses to the questions. So now you have to think about this, when they responded, they only wrote a narrative if they responded yes to a particular question. So if you didn't think this was an issue and you said no, then there was no need to write the narrative. So you're getting the narrative basically on just people who said, yes, I think cell phones are an issue, and here's why. So if you didn't think they were an issue, you didn't have to write a narrative. But, the key, I'm not going to go through this entire thing, but I'm just going to give you the keys. Pretty consistent across the board. It was just noted to be as a distraction from learning and academics. It impacted student social interactions with one another and behavior. There were issues and challenges enforcing the actual policy and getting all staff and students to buy into it. There was a consistent theme among staff that they really felt sometimes the staff member themselves having to enforce the policy damaged their relationship with students. Several students, particularly when you got to the middle school and the high school level, teachers, cited parental interference as an issue. And I was a little surprised by this, but just in conversation with some teachers, how often students are actually interrupted during the class by parents texting like during the school day was very surprising to me. But it seems to be pretty commonplace that regular conversations are just happening during the school day over non-urgent things. So that was a little surprising. And then obviously the concern about the addiction to social media and the negative emotional and mental health impacts that can have. And again, a little bit, specific things about at the younger grade levels, the smartwatches being a bigger issue than phones because the kids typically don't have the phones. And that as the kids get to be middle school and high school, they get to be a little bit more creative in how they hide and utilize their technology. So, earbuds and things like that are more common. And then just for flow, I kind of broke this down, each of the questions by, this is the global responses, but when you actually want to take a look at elementary, middle, high school, you have that feedback for each of the questions where the respondents were asked to provide a narrative. And again, overall, they really did a very nice job of doing so. We tried to sum this up as best we can to come up with the common themes that kept emerging in the responses. Now, again, this was 240 responses from teachers, which was, very kind of comprehensive to put together. But when we get to the parent survey in a little bit, that was thousands of responses. So again, that's really difficult to go line by line and tell you what people were thinking. So we did try to come up with the common themes that were emerging through the different text. But this is the feedback on the staff one. Not sure if people have any questions or thoughts on this particular survey and these responses, just as a data point before I review the parent one with you.
I have a lot of thoughts, but I feel like I feel like I would love to look at both together before diving in part because honestly, in my review of this before this meeting, there's a lot of commonalities. There's obviously some specific things came up in one, not the other, but yeah.
All right, so I'll go to the parent one if
What's it?
if no one has an issue with that. All right, so parent responses, or parent questions, very similar to, I'm sorry, the questions were very similar to the teacher questions. So again, as Diana said, there are some common themes. We had just under 2,000 responses to this survey, which is a very good number of responses. Again, this is largely parents, but you did have, it was open to family members, so you had, some aunts and uncles and kids themselves got a hold of the survey and gave us their feedback. So there is a good mix of things in here. And again, I think that's why the themes are important, but a little under 2,000 responses. And we also asked people here to identify which school they were kind of reporting their comments from. So we have that on the next slide. Parents were also asked about the different digital platforms they think their students may be using and to indicate if they think their student uses them during the day or not. Relatively, consistent with regard to like the video games and the YouTube and things along that lines. I would say I was a little surprised that parents didn't think that their kids were on TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat quite as much as is probably happening. So that was a little interesting to me. But again, that was the parents' perspective. And the other thing is this is truly the people taking the survey, whether it was the parents or the teachers, this is their perception of what's happening. This may not be actually happening, but I didn't, do a deeper dive other than to say this is at least perception of what's happening between what they think their kids are doing during school and then what they're actually doing could be a little bit different. And it would also,
One thing that is worth noting is that 40% of the people, or probably more than that, who took this are parents of elementary or younger. And so it doesn't surprise me too much that more of those kids would be accessing something like YouTube or
Right.
video games than a social media app that a lot of parents have a little bit more capability to prevent them from accessing.
and we can, if we want to, kind of dig deeper and even like call out the data by responses by school. But this was just a very high level based on what we had back. So when we asked the parents, do you think students' phone use at school is a problem? 28.5% said yes, they think it's a problem during the school day. Slightly more, 30% said no, they don't think it's a problem during the school day. And then 33% said, I think they might be a problem during the school day. So there's really a three-way split with regard to parents' perceptions of whether phones are a problem or not during the school day. We asked them if they know what the phone usage guidelines, this is specifically towards the phone uses, and about 60% said yes, 40% said no. Do you think your student knows? A little under 50% said yes, 28% said no, and 25% were unsure. That was similar to the responses we got on the teacher side. And something like that actually just kind of helps us reinforce, like when we do issue the student handbooks this fall and things like that, we can definitely in our messaging, both like in my messages that we send out weekly or even like the schools when they send messages out, make sure we're actually kind of highlighting where these policies are, what they are, to make sure that, no one doesn't know where they are or what they are. Whether they adhere to them or not is another thing, but we can at least make sure that the policies are being shared. Question on, do you think your school handles technology issues that arise with students effectively? A third said yes. Majority didn't know. So I'm assuming these are parents who probably just didn't have an issue with their child's phone usage. 18.2% said mixed. They handled some of them things well. They didn't handle others well. So this was a little bit of a mixed response. Would you support a cell phone ban for students during the school day? Half said yes, 30% said no, and 20% said they need more information. Again, this was a slightly lesser number than the teacher side. The teachers were more supportive of cell phone ban than the parents were.
Do we have this breakdown of this particular answer by school level?
I can get it.
We do.
We have the ability to
Okay.
dig deeper into that. I just don't have it at this point.
Okay.
Because it was 2,000
Because
responses.
I think that would be important.
Yeah. And then we have some narrative follow-ups on these two. And I think, as Diana mentioned, like, you'll see some consistent themes in the narrative responses for the two. And then on the parent side, if you do support a cell phone ban in the schools, what would you want to see? The majority, the 35.1, said full ban to ban, bell in the morning to bell in the afternoon, followed by people saying they didn't support a phone ban. So I don't know that they necessarily knew they weren't supposed to answer that question, but they made it clear that they don't support a ban. 22.5% wanted to see the ban during academic classes only. There are some schools that have implemented that. And then others wanted to have a ban in academic and public spaces, but basically weren't opposed to kids using a phone during like a certain identified time of the day if need be. And then again, on this one, we have the narratives from the parents, which again, pretty similarly aligned to theme-wise at least, the a lot of what was reported at the staff level. Hang on one second, I'm moving too fast. So again, themes were pretty consistent. The people that did see, or the parents or family members that did see phones as a problem, cited them as a distraction during academics and learning time. They were very concerned about the negative impact on social development of their students, citing the lack of just face-to-face interaction and a lack of social connectedness within buildings. They saw bullying and inappropriate content being used to create issues both within the school day, outside of the school day. They acknowledged difficulty in kind of managing a classroom and some of the struggles that can happen with enforcement of the policy. They're concerned about students' addiction and the fact that they haven't fully developed to be able to know about like self-control and when to properly use a phone and not use a phone. Concerned about, anxiety, depression, those type of mental health and well-being type things that come from potential phone use at really young ages. Digital platforms, obviously, the impact on the classroom teachers. We again broke this down by school level, and I think we can go back in and break down some of the question responses by school level. I just didn't do that. We just broke down the narratives for the time being to again kind of tell you grade level by grade level what we were seeing. But I think even in the end, a lot of the recommendations, both from the teaching staff and the parent staff, were pretty consistent around what people might like to see. And that's what we have.
I'm curious, to me, this is a pretty overwhelming sense that this is a concern for a lot of people holding two very different roles, cell phone use in general. It's not as obvious what the solution is. But I think there is one of the things that did seem to thread really clearly throughout both parent responses and educator responses were concerns about inconsistency, both of enforcement, both from school to school, and in terms of expectations different educators themselves held for what students would and would not be able to do. And my concern coming out of that is, although it feels very premature to try to take an action step around a ban or something that big. The next thing we're going to be talking about, I think, is student handbooks. And I'm wondering, from your perspective as superintendent, having looked at this data and ostensibly talked to some administrators as well, because I was surprised to not see any shifts really around smartwatches, for example, which seemed kind of universally to be a problem at the elementary level, or anything changing at all around, consistency around cell phone usage in schools. And I'm curious if you anticipate the need for, a more immediate action in this area?
Yeah, so two different things. So we did the survey and we got the results, obviously, like right towards the end of June.
Yeah.
So this hasn't been information I've even shared with the administration yet.
Okay.
Because we've kind of broken for the summer.
Right, I
And
guess
people
that's
are on different schedules and things like that. So this is one of our topics when we get together for our summer retreat that we're going to talk about. So when I mentioned I'm going to send this to the teaching staff, I'm obviously going to send it to the admin too, so that they can start to think about this. I guess the way I was thinking about approaching it in the short term, when it comes to like our student handbooks and things like that, we typically, when issues like this come up, and in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, I do think it's premature to do, say, like a full ban or whatever.
Right.
I don't think we'd want to be out there leading or reacting to whatever potentially could happen statewide, because I do think that there is some momentum, one way or
Right.
the other, that something's going to happen statewide, and then we would have to just basically adopt or follow or modify whatever comes of that. So I think it would be best for us to sit and kind of wait on the bigger picture to see what's
Right.
going to actually happen on that front. What I'd like to see happen with us is consistency with enforcement of whatever we actually currently have as a start for our policies. So I know, and again, like, I do think smartwatches need to be identified, but what we try to do is what is the name of that acceptable student?
The
Digital.
CPS student empowered digital.
Yeah, the
use.
empowered digital use policy is not technically the handbook, but the handbook will link off and kind of reference that. I think that would be an easier document to pull some administration together, some teachers, to get some feedback around what needs to get beefed up in that particular document. Because if you approve later on the handbook, or whenever we approve the handbooks, that basically is a link off of the handbook. So we can modify the digital use policy, whatever we call it, I keep forgetting the name. But whatever that is, we can make an update to that. And then basically the handbook is going to link off to that, so that could be kind of fresh with what we have. But I think whatever we end up having, because I do think I did hear in there, some good things that are happening is some different schools with regard to just, you can have a phone, but it has to be off, and it has to be in your bag, it has to be in your locker, things like that. I think we need to be very just consistent in the messaging of that and the actual enforcement of that, and setting the expectation of the administration and the staff in the buildings that this is what's going to have to be. And kind of hold ourselves temporarily to that as we talk through what some of these bigger changes may be based on whatever the pending legislation is.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't proposing we make like a gigantic shift tonight
Right.
in the handbook, but I was thinking that there are some smaller things that do feel like they're absent from the handbook. And so maybe that other digital use guidelines is the place to do that. But what I don't want to do is, clearly this got a lot of interest. We had a ton of responses to this. And we got a lot of data, and although there's mixes in certain, like, what action steps to take, there was clear concern that seemed pretty consistent, vast majority. What I don't want to do is say, thank you for your information, we're going to do nothing about it. We're
Right.
just going to sit on our hands. And so I am just trying to think, timing-wise, it's not ideal, right? So what would be ideal is if we still had 4 months before student handbooks were coming out and things like that. We don't. So I'm wondering, are there mechanisms that we could use, and I don't know if it would be you or Dennis who might know this, if there needed to be a shift mid-year, for example, either reflective of a state law that changes or, after additional meetings and conversations, we decide action needs to happen mid-year, or is the student handbook set in stone and we can't make a shift until next year?
No, so when you approve the student handbook, you're basically kind of blessing it for the start of that school year. And then that's the document that's updated on the website, and that's the document that's disseminated to parents. But laws change all the time. You may have a shift in a policy or a procedure that you want to implement. So you would just need to have a public session to actually discuss and incorporate that change into the handbook. It is then just amended. So if you amend a handbook like mid-year, we would just then have a duty to notify the parents that something has changed. So if you amended something in October based on, because I do think we also need to have a discussion with, say, parents at like PTOs, a council of schools, or, whatever ends up happening on this to kind of gain some, hopefully some buy-in or some education or understanding of why this is important to the educators who completed the survey too. If we ultimately did change something or make some kind of a shift, we would just need to do like a revote. obviously amend the handbook online, and then just send a message to folks saying, you know, it has been amended, this is what's changed, because you don't want someone to have to read the whole handbook all over again, and just call it out, but that certainly can happen.
In a similar vein, if there's legislation that does go through and they're saying you have to do X, then we are gonna have to develop a policy that goes with that, and then when that policy goes in place, then that links to the handbook to begin with, so.
And not have, so to my knowledge, I have not been here since we have actually made changes in our own policy manual. Would that happen through,
We did it right before you got on. We did a
yeah,
big-
so it would
big-
happen through the policy
Yeah,
subcommittee?
yeah. We did a big review 2 years ago, 2.5
We
years
did
ago.
it.
Yeah.
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 I mean, yeah, I'm not necessarily, I'm not saying tonight we make a new policy. It's more that I just want to make sure this feels, like I said, like a really strong call to action to me. And I just want to make sure we have an action plan for how we're going to be responsive and yes, adaptive to what may be shifting in the coming months, but also thinking very seriously about, you know, what we can do as soon as it makes sense to kind of interrupt some of the challenges that are happening. Frankly, the fact that teacher morale is impacted by this, according to such a high percentage, is a real concern for me, let alone what impacts it might have on student learning. So I just want to make sure we're not looking at appreciating the data and then moving on.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we're doing that at all. And again, I think it was good to get the data, to at least have that like over the summer. And as we engage with Jill to figure out like how we want to roll some of this discussion out for next year, it'll be a good starting point for us. I definitely think, you know, the parents will split 50-50 with regard to, you know, they'd like to see a ban, they don't want to see a ban. But I didn't really see anyone saying, even if he didn't support a ban, we don't think there should be consistency in the practice or the implementation of what you currently have. I think that's something that we can kind of, you know, seize on and start to educate people. And I think maybe also once parents had an opportunity to even just read the results of the survey, maybe that'll help inform their position a little bit. It may not, but I do think I'd planned, unless you tell me otherwise, to share this with the broader community, just so that they can see what we received as a result as well, and know that this obviously was a hot topic. I mean, to get 2,000 responses is a pretty good number, the 2 weeks before the end of the school year.
I would just want to make sure, I do think that this should be shared. I mean, it's obviously public now, it's in the meeting, but
Right.
beyond that, I do think it should be proactively shared. I just hope that it is proactively shared with messaging that we will continue to dig into this
Right.
and you know, consider based on the context what actions may need to happen. Because again, I don't want parents to say, wow, you know, only 20, so it isn't really 50-50. 50% of parents say they do want to ban, 20% need more information, and only just under 30% said no. So I think that need more information group may want to see what other parents are saying, what teachers are seeing too, because there was a pretty high percentage of parents who said they don't know if it's a problem during a school day, right? They don't know how things are being implemented. So I think the data is a starting point, but I think messaging it that it's a starting point and that we're not just ignoring the issue from here.
Right. I think what could help us frame that, though, is if I had a better plan, working with like Jill to figure out like how we're going to maybe roll some of this discussion out for the fall. We could let people know, this is great data that we're going to use to start this conversation. Here's where the conversation's going. So I just need a little bit of time to do that. And actually, again, it was a ton of data. I want to dig a little deeper into some of the individual school responses. And we'll do that.
Okay.
I want to make a comment. I think that was interesting to me is the number of parents they're saying are texting, as you mentioned. And I skipped ahead right now, the handbook. It's really clear that all cell phones should be off while in school, unless in use for instructional purposes. And any student using a cell phone for non-instructional purposes while school is in session will have that cell phone confiscated by administration. That's right there in the handbook. And you have parents who think they should still be able to contact their child when the rule says your child should have that phone off.
The loophole is that it doesn't specify smart devices. And I think a lot, if I had to guess, we haven't seen the breakdown of this data. If I had to guess, it's some of the younger kids who have the smartwatches who are getting texts from their parents potentially.
I think the high school
Not
kids are too, though.
kindergartners necessarily, but maybe
The high
fourth.
school kids are getting them too.
Yes.
But my point is that the manual or the handbook does not mention anything but cell phones.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I feel like the text could be coming through that. I know anecdotally that is happening for several people that my son is acquainted to. So yeah, I mean, I know it's happening.
In order for that to happen, I guess they connect their cell phone to the Wi-Fi. If you don't have a phone, how do you get?
You can have cell service on a.
Oh yeah,
and
those smart
Who's paying for
devices.
cell service for their kids?
The parents.
Oh, my.
The parents pay for the kids to have, I mean, a smartwatch is not dissimilar in terms of like, you pay for the service just like you would for a phone.
I don't even have cell service on my own.
I know, but if you.
A lot of money.
If you're a kid and you're not gonna have a phone, the parent can pay for the cell service for the smartphone.
Right.
That's smart.
And a lot of parents think of this as like, oh, well, then my kid at least doesn't have social media. They have just a smart
Yeah,
device.
yeah.
It's limited for me to communicate with them. But I feel like that might be the gap. That is actually going to be the one recommendation I make tonight around the handbook is that there be explicit language adding and smart devices such as smartwatches where it has cell phones listed.
Smartwatches also, I believe, have a tracking mechanism, which is one of the reasons many parents want the younger children to have them, is they can track. So, I think that, one, we need definitely a greater breakdown here in terms of leveling, the grade levels and so on. The other thing is, I haven't looked lately, what's going on with that legislation, how quickly that's moving along.
I definitely think it's being fast-tracked more than just your regular bill. But, I mean, it's still, they're breaking for summer session at this point, so
Right.
it's still not gonna be taken up until the fall.
Right.
It won't be before the start of the school year. And I mean, the House seems to be pretty supportive.
Okay.
I don't know at all about the Senate or where it could go from there.
So that
It
means.
advances in the, it's advancing in the Senate. That's all I
So
know.
that for the beginning of this school year, that means that either we're going to change what our policy is currently, which is in the handbook, or we'll, and advise people of that initially at the beginning of the school year, or we're going to be putting it off totally until the legislation decision is made. I would think at a very minimum, that for the beginning of the school year, we have to make sure that each student who can read the policy is asked to sign off and read on the policy, maybe even at the beginning of the year, and also the parents, and the teachers, everybody needs to sign off on the policy so that it's actually read and people know what it is.
Do they have a sign off?
We don't.
Really, they don't.
Wait, but for the parents?
Parents and students don't?
No, I mean, the teachers sign off on our, like the employee sign-offs each year, so we have that. We provide the handbooks to the parents, and we hope that they would actually like look at them with their students. We can like kind of call out and really push a particular policy or practice if we want to, but we don't have any leverage to make sure someone signs them or not.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And I remember at the beginning of the year, we used to get so much paperwork
Yeah.
that it's like, okay, and I'm doing it for two
Right, you could have a
kids.
sign off, but it doesn't necessarily mean
Right,
somebody's
and
gonna read
nobody
it.
actually reads the thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I
no.
suspect a lot of people don't read this handbook
Right.
at
So the
all.
teachers don't either.
Unless you have to,
Unfortunately,
unless something
they have to
happens
take
and
it
you have to look at
forcibly.
it.
Maybe the importance of it is that when we make this public in the sense of we're doing it now, but also at the same time, maybe making it a part of our website or whatever, in terms of the information, we also put, this is what's in the handbook. Here it is. You don't have to go search for it in the entire handbook.
Right.
Here it is.
Even like in our messaging, like that would be something where I could just hyperlink like the digital use, the acceptable policy, things like that, and really kind of hit it on the messaging. And I can ask the principals at the individual schools to incorporate the same into their messaging to parents. If there's like a hot button issue that we really want to make sure gets highlighted, we certainly can do that.
Yeah, because one of the things we found during the year when you reported to us what was going on at each one of the schools is that actually it was communicated it wasn't consistent how it was communicated, and it wasn't consistent what was communicated. So maybe that's another step, is to make sure that that messaging is very consistent.
Right, any other comments on this? Everybody, I feel, is comfortable with releasing this to the public, both the
Yes.
teachers and the, yeah, okay. That was just a question with us, so everybody's
Yeah,
good.
well, I mean, it is public, but
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just gonna make an actual special
Yeah.
email, like a message to just, again, frame this and
Summarize it
provide.
in some
Yeah,
way.
and provide the feedback, because there are some parents who are gonna be interested, some parents aren't, but the ones that at least took the time to look at it
Yeah.
and respond, I wanna make sure they at least know what the results were. So
Yeah.
I'll work on framing that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next, actually, I'm going to ask Linda to review the student handbooks and the addendums for next year with us.
So, in your very large packet, which I'm assuming the handbooks took up a lot of that room, you'll see both the family and student handbook, which is the K through 12 handbook, and then CHS has what we call the addendum, because there are other rules that are applicable for high school only, and rather than convolute the larger handbook, family handbook, for K through 8 parents, they use that handbook in addition to the larger handbook. So I was actually surprised this year, and I was talking about it before the meeting started with a couple of members, that there was a lot of changes by the attorney's office this year, but when I started to look at those changes, a lot of them were obviously laws, but there was a lot of like just quick language cleanup, which makes it look like there's more than what we're typically used to. So in the family and student handbook, there were some, tweaks around discipline and due process, academic integrity, transportation, student conduct and behavior, dress code, and some of the emergency procedures that we have. And then some bigger law changes around like hazing. Those are the big ones that we really need them to look at. Because last year, we had a very large overhaul of our handbooks to make sure that we had the student discipline in place, which they made those changes, and that was significant last year. And then in the high school addendum, again, any of those changes that were made in the family one that are applicable, such as like hazing or anything like that, you'll see in there as well. But then they had just some of their own tweaks that they've seen over the year that they needed to address, which was some of the dual enrollment expansion, the innovation pathways, some of their block clarifications around their plus block, their pride block, some attendance and parking revisions. Again, these are not like the law pieces. The big thing is the law, but it's some tweaks that make the high school run better. It goes, a little bit easier. Some field trip policy enhancements, conduct and discipline. There was some changes around gender identity and anti-discrimination updates, extracurricular, athletic eligibility, safety and security revisions, and communication and contact updates. That's just like who do you call if something happens. So in terms of like the law, there wasn't huge law changes for this year, but just some language cleanup. I actually like some of the stuff that the attorneys did to like just kind of streamline the handbooks, because sometimes we get a little wordy. And it's easier just to be like, refer to the special education laws, right, instead of writing all the laws. I think one of the things we're gonna probably do this upcoming year, we did it a few years ago, to just streamline some of those smaller things, to just put together a small handbook committee of the administrators to just clean up some of the redundancy, or some of the ones that could just be an easy link, like please go to this link. We typically go into the handbooks. I know we have people that read them. We typically go in the handbooks, like if there's a question, right? That's when you refer to a handbook over some of the bigger items. So it does look like a lot, but a lot of it's just quick language changes that we were in agreement with. So we're open to some questions.
So in the track changes, like the blue text, is that stuff the lawyer has
Yeah, so if you
changed?
see, you see his name, I think it was, I can't think of his first name. You would think that that would be the first thing that pops up, right? Oh, that's Steve and me,
The
Steve.
blue is the lawyer.
Blue is the law, that's, I
Yes.
just trying
You
to.
can't
I
think
see,
of it.
mine's different, mine's all in, I have his name, so I have his name. and-
Okay, yeah, so in ours is just blue.
Okay.
So like all of a sudden in like the attendance, there's a huge, like 3-paragraph
Correct,
thing that
that would
wasn't
be the
there
attorney.
before.
Yeah, we didn't write that much. If you see something in another color.
So
that's
he's
like-
saying we should put that in there
Correct.
because of some sort of loopholes we want to try to avoid, or?
Correct.
Okay,
Or
So-
clarification, or a link that you need to go to. So I didn't realize that it came up in a different color, because I think you turned it into the PDF. So if you're saying that the blue is the attorney,
yeah.
that would make sense. Yes,
Yeah,
I can tell right off the bat, just on that first one that he just showed me.
so it's not like a strike through, but he just add this, all of a sudden now
Correct,
you
it
add
might
this
be he
extra.
removed it, and then he wants you to add this in.
Yeah,
I mean, there are some words that are stricken through.
Yeah.
But James, if you happen to look at the page 19
yeah,
at the bottom.
yeah, there are some strike throughs, I know that.
Strike to strike, but that's him
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So the blue is the attorney, and you can see he struck through some words, and he added some words.
Yeah,
He took out a legal reference. But yeah, the blue is basically all coming from the attorney's recommendation.
I can tell you, we didn't, like, we meaning, you see, like, Steve Murray and I sat through the high school addendum one. Anything that's in the family one, other than this blue, is me. Very minimal changes, like, like a missing comma, spelling error, like, there was nothing big that we needed on our side.
yeah. So these
It's
are
primarily the attorney.
just his suggestions of here's how to make.
Yeah, some of them
something
you have to
have-
because the
stick
law
better,
has
yeah.
changed, right? Or we had the wrong information
Yeah.
in there.
Okay.
Some of it was his suggestions, like I did like how he wrote the response better than what we had.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's saying the same thing, it's just, he wrote it a little bit better.
Right, okay. Yeah, because like you said, I didn't expect to be a lot of changes like
didn't
this, but
either.
you said it's a new attorney, so he's probably looking for new eyes and
Correct.
new ways of
Yeah.
stating things and, okay.
I think some of the things became just more general.
Yeah, a lot of them are the general, quick changes, and that's probably either him or me, just like this does, let's fix this sentence and make it clearer. It didn't change the law. For the attorneys, it's important that they're, fixing anything for the law, like that student, so the student discipline, that was big last year. Our handbooks were not
Right.
up to date prior to the beginning of the school year, so that was a lot of changes.
Yeah, the one that stood out, there was like a search and seizure one where our current, other policy is if you're there, we can go in your locker, and now it says, no, we can go in your
You
locker,
can go
period.
into your
Yeah,
locker, that is.
that was a little bit more,
It's more direct.
it
It's not
disagreed.
like maybe perhaps.
Exactly.
It is, it is our property, we are going to search it.
Exactly.
We're gonna search your backpack.
Right, right.
And I reread what he had and we were in agreement. So
Yeah.
both Steve Murray and I sat and went through the high school one. I was, the sole survivor of the family and student one, and I was in agreement with what the attorney said. And if we're not, or we're not sure, we call them
Okay.
I am going to ask this question. On page 5,
on the student one.
I printed this thing out. Sorry, it's page 5 on the printout.
What's the little
Yeah,
page
don't
number
worry
on the
about
bottom right?
format.
It says, it's under absences and the discouraging of absences.
Yeah,
Okay, so, and it points out very distinctly, family wishing to return with their children to their native country for personal or family business during the school year must adhere to the provisions of the school committee policy. Isn't that obvious? I mean, it's whatever you do. If you decided that you wanted to leave with your family for any reason to any country, it doesn't, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we do have we have that in there because we do have some situations of families during particular times of the school year leaving for quite a long time with expectations from the school district.
Okay,
Why does it have to specify it's their native country? They might just
Right.
decide we're gonna go to Spain for, 6 weeks because we feel like it.
Or 6 months, yeah.
Because that's not what's prevalent. It
Yeah.
is their native country.
Yeah.
Their request is to their native country.
So they think that so what you're saying is if the family believes that going back to the native country would be an excused absence?
Correct.
we actually have families that, because they feel like they're doing that, they feel like they should be able to do like online schooling or like remote schooling while they're gone.
And then just come back.
And
not-
come back, and we haven't permitted that. Like your point, Susan, earlier, like the paragraph before that just talks about like the vacations. I
Right.
think would be more like the discouraged piece. The vacations are typically like short-term. We still discourage them, but I mean, vacation's typically a week. It's and we do, this happens every year. People do, and they identify it, I don't know why, as needing to return to their native country to take care of family or legal business and things like this, but they're gone for like weeks and months at a time. So perhaps that's why it's called out that way, but you do actually have a policy about that.
Because I think it would be any absence over whatever the number of weeks is, the policy applies. And it's not an excuse, period, so, do you know what I mean? So there's, because we're just at a time, I think, in our, socially, in society, where this has a lot of meaning. I don't know. It doesn't harm me in any way, personally, but I'm just thinking it could be to any country or any state. If you move the child out of here and go anywhere for a certain amount of time, period, that applies.
There is a limit, like, after a certain number of days, it could be
They
withdrawn.
disenrolled, yeah.
Yeah, disenrolled, and that is in there, the disenrollment part, so
Right.
I forget how many days it is, but
Yeah.
if you're not
It's 10.
showing up, they can say,
They're disenrolled,
Yeah.
Consecutive, right?
period.
10 consecutive.
yeah, 10 consecutive days, so there's that, that's all right, it doesn't matter where you go, if you're not there for
Right.
10 days and no excuse and no,
It really doesn't matter.
But is it in the handbook in that way, just to make sure that it's very clear?
it's in the
for
handbook,
families who
definitely,
Chosen to do
This,
that?
this isn't a new ad. This has been
Right, I
in the
know that,
handbook.
it's been happening for,
yeah.
And we do, I don't know why, but they phrase this, we do get these requests from parents because they're going back to their native country. And they,
Yes.
for some reason, think that that gives them like a special exemption
I
type thing.
had students in the past who had to go back for a family wedding.
Yeah.
And they would be gone for many, many weeks in a row because they had to go back for a family wedding if they're going to go that far away.
And that's something.
I
we
don't
can
wanna
put
cause
this
any-
committee together, we can like revisit and say, is it redundant, is it this, I mean, it could be, but in general, we like to have that in there as a handbook piece as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if, frankly, to me, this feels more succinct and less like you're calling a subgroup of our students out. If you say, the paragraph above, where it says, parents are strongly discouraged from taking vacations while school is in session, I think you could add to that, from taking vacations or, traveling for family or personal business while school is in session, because to me that is
Just add it
covering,
into that.
what?
That's true.
To me, that is covering both things without, I would agree that the way that it is currently phrased, reading it in a 2025 context feels like you are calling a subgroup of our families out in a way that feels targeted. And I know that was not the intention, but I'm worried that when somebody's reading this, that will be the impact.
It's in the context of today.
I'm not weighing in on something like that
I-
because I didn't write this per se.
Yes.
This has been in our
I
handbook.
think
and
you're
throughout.
pointing out something really important, because I am sure that there are people, and culturally, I think that has impacts too. On decisions of whether to take children out or not take children out. But it could be vacations, or it could be for any other business, personal or family
We
business
have
is
that in the
it.
paragraph above.
Yeah,
I feel like separating them into two separate paragraphs, to me, it's a semantic difference perhaps, but I do feel like it feels like a call out.
it is. For some reason this year, it really stuck with me as I was reading through it, and it's highlighted and everything, and I think it's a particular group.
It's highlighted because it's new, it's from the attorney.
Yeah,
Yeah, the attorney
Yeah.
attorney reviewed it and didn't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't write that, he
Issue
wrote that.
with that.
Yeah. I guess my question is, in the high school one, there's either a new section or a new stuff on course levels, programs, is that like, so pages 60 to like, I don't know, 80 something are all red line,
That's probably the path, is that the pathway one I had?
it has levels, it has stuff about levels that wasn't there before, or if it wasn't, it's red, so that's why I asked.
It was
I would-
big. It
I would
was big
assume
and
it
it-
was you or Steve if it's all
I
red.
have to go to the page.
Yeah, you're gonna go all the way to like 68.
Page?
68 in the high school one.
Yeah, it looks like there's a new course level. I had a question about the same one.
So, but the next 10 pages are mainly based, it's all new stuff
Yeah.
on the levels and programming.
Yeah, it's not new, those are our levels.
Yeah, okay, but it's all red.
But it's all connected to the pathway grants, like to all the pathways that we're doing.
Okay, so those levels descriptions haven't changed?
They
or-
haven't changed, they just have put it.
But that's why I didn't know why
in
they
that
were red. Yeah. That's why I come up, yeah.
yeah.
I get the pathways part of it, but,
Yeah, those, our course levels have always been there. These are our course levels. Nothing has changed in them.
okay, that's,
That's really
That's
important.
what I'm wondering if they cut and paste, because he didn't even, I had Principal Murray flag like all of his different
Yeah.
changes.
That-
And he didn't change all that. I wonder if they cut it out, placed it, like something. got
Okay,
cut
so
out,
maybe
and
that's it. Maybe they
pasted back
moved
in
it.
By accident.
Yeah.
I can confirm with him, but these are our levels.
so those are all the same descriptions that we've had? I mean, it's got a couple formatting things on there, but.
I
'cause you
think
had-
what they did is they put the levels back in, and then it's just a matter of how they do their schedule changes.
Yeah, and then, but no, actually, there's strike through after that though, too. So they definitely did change
But
something.
you know, if you pull something else, you're striking through. I
Which
think-
page are we on right now?
68, 69, and this high school one.
Yep.
I think it's because they changed their procedures for how to add and drop a class. They may have cut and pasted out their levels and then threw that back in, like they may have cut them out and then put them back in because they changed their policy and program change consideration.
I see that one, yeah, that's got a bazillion things on
I'm
it.
wondering if they cut out the levels by accident and put those back in because the changes are really actually around his policy and program changes for consideration. So if you want to change your schedule, you need a level change.
Okay.
What's gonna happen when you put your add drop form in, if you go underneath that, it's all about.
Yeah, no, I see that section, I just didn't,
And then how to appeal the denied schedule change.
right, and then you have your,
I wonder if I don't think that, those are our levels and that's what they received, so I can totally verify that. I think they got cut out and put back in when they went to.
So a
change
few years ago, we took out one particular, honors.
we took out level
We
3.
took out honors, like it was honors and then honors 2, like there was honors 1 and
Okay.
honors 2. There's
Just-
only honors.
Yeah, because
They didn't
this is
add
a
any
big
more.
issue right now with many people. Parents especially, and I don't know if you've seen, like, Newton is one of the districts that's having real issues with the percentage of people that are leaving the district. There was a big story, I think, in
Read
the
about it in the
Globe this past week, that are leaving the district and going to private schools, and the reason they are is because many are saying that the coursework is not difficult enough for the students who perform well in the district, and it's because of the leveling of the courses. Now, this, I believe, remains exactly what we've had now for these number of years after we changed that honors 1 and 2.
We have not changed our levels though.
Okay.
AP, honors, CP, and there's a CP2 level in some of the content areas. So those have not changed. On mine, I can see that Steve's the one that made that change on here, and it looks like he made a format change, so it may have highlighted the whole thing. He did not change the
So
actual.
the content is the same,
The content's the same.
and,
It's the change for him is they had cleaned up their policy for program change consideration. So about allocation of staff, room, courses, if a child needs to change a level,
Yep.
what the process is.
okay, and is the 3 tiers of early college access, that new?
That's new.
That's new. Okay, so that, because that's red line, obviously, and too, but,
Correct.
but that's all new,
Page is that?
it's 80.
They wanted to add that information in because it was not in their handbook now that we have the college pathways. That's all additional information.
I'm trying to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the problem.
I'm working off the red, like, because I need to know who did
Yeah.
Yeah,
what, so
yeah.
I'm only on page like 67, because I'm gonna
Yeah, that's
reformat.
new.
Okay. All right. Those are just 2 sections that I didn't
Yeah,
know.
no,
what-
that's
what
big, that's
global
added,
changes. Yeah.
so that whole section's added.
Right.
The other one, I think, when he formatted the levels, we never changed the levels.
Okay, okay.
I would just bring up page 20 of the student handbook, which is page 151 for those looking in their digital
Are you back
PDF.
on the family student handbook?
Yeah.
Okay,
Page 20 of the family student handbook where it mentions phone usage. I would strongly request that we change it to reflect what we are hearing from schools and have been consistently hearing through the survey, that smart devices more broadly are also implicated here. So, where it says all cell phones should be off while in school,
I'm
from my
trying-
perspective,
I'm still trying to get there. Hang on a second.
What's the,
Page 20?
again, page 20 of the student and family
Yeah.
handbook, which is 151 on your PDF.
Under phone usage?
Yep,
Okay, where are you
I
again?
can no longer find
she's on
it.
the third sent.
So I said, where it says all cell phones should be off while in school unless in use for instructional purposes, my thought would be that it should say all cell phones and other smart devices should be off while in school, blah, blah, blah. And then any student using a cell phone, again, should say any student using a cell phone or smart device such as a watch for non-instructional purposes, et cetera.
The only confusion we're gonna run into, like, and I'm not disagreeing with, like, I know what you're trying to add in there, but if you say smart device, we have kids that have iPads, we have like, the kids will be like, I can't use my computer, I'm just.
Well, it says unless in use for instructional purposes.
Yeah, so all if we're like targeting just this is why I think we were recommending, like, looking at that digital usage piece, because I don't know what the right term to call it, if we're really kind of targeting those, like, the smartwatches that have, like, the actual cell service in it, or other means of ways of communicating that they shouldn't be doing, because they should be focused in class. I'm just trying to think of the name for it.
For instance, I don't agree a smartwatch should be turned off. It's still a watch. A lot of kids use the fitness information.
Oh, yeah, that's
So you don't
right,
want to
That's- I was
turn
thinking the
your
same thing.
watch off 100%. We need to deal with the usage of it for texting or phone calls is not allowed.
Well, then maybe it's not that first line, maybe it's just the second line where it says any student using a cell phone or other, smart device such as a watch for non-instructional purposes while school is in session, blah, blah, blah. I worry that if one of the issues is consistency, and this particular issue seems to be the thing that we have zero mention of in the handbook, I just worry about that oversight. To me, it doesn't feel like it's a drastic change just to mention that that is umbrellaed in as we talk about phone usage.
Yeah, I'm not, again, I hear what you're saying, I just don't know what the right, like,
We'll maybe add in a link to the digital usage thing there.
but it's not in that part either.
No, but
You almost
we'll-
wanna kick it
we'll have to
back to
right.
that group, or get some guidance on what you call it, that
Right,
doesn't
right.
preclude, like, you brought up two things, and we're not even, like, with kids having this issue, right? Like, so I'm thinking, well, like, you don't want a loophole, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the right
I mean,
term is.
if you have I get what you're saying, because watches have different, so you can turn it into school mode, for example. But it's obviously very tricky to enforce whether or not a kid's smartwatch is in school mode or not. But what I think, if I'm thinking about the thrust of what we're trying to say, is parents should not be texting their kids' smart devices any more than they should be texting their child's cell phone during the school day. And similarly, there should not be an expectation that children are texting. So maybe that's what I'm specifically thinking about here, is the texting access. I don't know how to exactly to articulate it,
You say
but,
cell phones are text.
or other
receiving-
texting devices.
Other
or-
text, right, other texting device, because that's
Texting
what
or
the
phone
crux-
calls, because you can get a phone call. on
Yeah,
a
that's
watch.
true.
Texting / I mean, we're gonna have a
Yeah.
lot of slashes, I just don't know.
Well, that's where you come back to phone usage, which I think is an accurate term, but I don't, because it specifically calls out cell phones, to me, that implies it is limited to cell phones. And that is probably part of the rise of smart
Yeah.
devices.
I 100%
So
agree that we have to
probably-
address the issue about smart watches, but you can't tell someone to turn their watch off.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the smartwatches to know about the modes and things like that, but again, I get the gist of what you're saying. I'm almost wondering if there is a way for the smartwatch to be in like a school mode, a safe mode, or whatever you want to call it. So it's still working as a watch, but it's not doing anything other than that. If there could be language that just basically says, smart watches need to be in school mode, a safe mode or whatever during the day. And if they're basically being used for calls or texting or whatever, then they would be treated the same way like a cell phone would be and be confiscated.
That's what I'm saying, and I feel like it could be accomplished I mean, you don't even need to call it a certain mode. I think it's just saying other smart devices such as watches should not be used for calling or texting purposes during the school day, period. Like, I feel like that additional sentence takes care of that concern without necessarily policing whether it's through the mode that it's in or whether it's off during the day or, you know what I mean? Like, I think those details might be part of a broader policy.
One more thing. Are students able to, would a student be able to send an email to a parent through their computer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this whole
Do it off their
paragraph,
watch too.
yeah, this whole paragraph right here should actually be more broad and should be about communicating with a student during class time, during school. What is allowed and what isn't.
Well, in some ways, this is addressing two concerns. One is contact during the
Right.
school day, which is the beginning of it.
Right.
And then the second is the consequences specifically around what they term as cell phones, but I would say
Yeah.
a device being
It's
used
incorporated
improperly.
in there.
But I think your first sentence is basically saying if a student needs to contact home, they should, go to the office to make the call.
Right.
If the parent needs to talk to the kid, they should call the school office to talk to the kid. This second sentence. I mean, that's basically how you want it to work. We can't stop someone from sending an email. If someone's using their phone or if they're using their watch and they shouldn't be, I think that's when they've kind of violated the spirit of what we're trying to get at.
Even the concept of contacting home, it's not necessarily that. I mean, a student could be texting the parent at work or anywhere
Or may not
else.
be a parent. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
or
other
may not be
reality.
a
We're saying
parent,
parent.
exactly.
I,
So it's just communication with a student and the outside world,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, during school can be done because the student can go to the office and ask to use the phone or contact the parent some other way. Email my father or my mother or whatever, I need to touch base with them. But, they shouldn't be emailing, texting, or doing anything else.
Well,
Unless it's a
whether just put
necessity.
Communication device, all cell phone / communication device.
yeah,
Like.
It's almost like a phone, your watch can be used for any of the passive
Yeah.
applications
Exactly.
it has, but nothing that they have to actively
It's about
engage with it.
communicate, like in the first few sentences, it is about like, if your child needs to talk to you, or you need to talk to your child, go to the office, get on the horn, don't be
Right.
interrupting.
But your kid can't use your
But why-
smartwatch to arrange a visit to the bathroom for somebody else either. It's not
Yes,
just
they
about
can, they can
parents.
text somebody else.
No, but we don't
we
want them
shouldn't is,
to.
I think, the
Oh, I
point.
know.
It's
but
not
that's
just
so
about
all cell
parents.
phones or / communication device.
Yeah, and that is one of the comments in the survey.
And the other reality, and I think this is the subtleties that we will have to get at later, is that just receiving notifications is incredibly distracting for kids too. So I think that is where, even if the child is not actively saying, hey, I'm gonna text my mom or I'm gonna text my friend,
It's gone
they're
boom.
getting an alert that they then look at when they are not focused on what is happening. My younger son has even talked about peers of his who have been like struggling to focus because of this. So I know that this is a thing. I don't necessarily think we can or should get into all of the weeds tonight as we talk about this handbook, but I would recommend there be some language in here around communication channels, including things other than cell phones, not being permitted for non-instructional purposes.
Well, a communication device, what if somebody walks in with a walkie-talkie? Can't
use it.
That's what I'm saying.
We're gonna start bringing walkie-talkies in.
I mean, they shouldn't be using any of these for
I know,
non-instructional
but put it on
purposes.
the other,
Yeah.
and then on the other one, like underneath, just that last sentence where it says, first offense will lead to a warning and the administrator will return the phone / communication device to the student at the end of the day. Second and subsequent offenses, that should be may. I gotta get rid of will, sorry, I don't know why that was there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
can we call it a communication device? Would that be clear enough
Can
what
you
we're
say
talking
phones?
about?
Because the issue is phones, like the larger issue is phones. It's just, if
Right.
you want to incorporate these other communication devices without precluding, like somebody
I
saying,
mean, for the purpose of trying to get the handbook approved, you could do cell phone / communication device for the time being. You could further define communication device in the acceptable use policy.
Yeah.
And then when we revisit this, we all know what the intent is, and we revisit this the next time. If it needs to be clearer or change something, we could do that.
Okay.
I think, my mindset here is this is like obviously a many-part conversation. I just want to make sure that if we're talking about consistency, if families are receiving communications in mailings every week from their schools about how they should not be communicating with their kids through smart devices, including watches, they're calling that out in communication to parents, then I want to make sure our handbook lines up with that, particularly since that is our intent.
So everybody okay with that change? Add the / communication device?
Yep, that would do it.
I am, as long as they're not told they have to turn their watch itself off,
I'm
that
gonna
one
have to
sentence.
change it in the high school addendum as well.
Yeah,
'cause I
that
think
one
the
sentence about them being
paragraph
off.
that's okay.
That's fine.
For the purposes of emotion so far, I've got the communication devices thing on the phone.
So any reference to phone in the phone usage paragraph will be cell phone / communication device.
Okay.
I already,
Because there's.
Yeah, and I think
Motion
where
so
it
we can
says
do that.
off, it should say off
handbook with the
or
changes
communication
discussed.
disabled.
That's gonna be it.
Because
No, yeah.
I think
It's one of them.
Susan's opposition is that she does not want to say that they should all be off.
Right.
where's that? Where are you?
The sentence that says all cell phones should be off while in
Oh,
school.
oh. So, okay.
Communication devices / communication devices.
Well, they're not using it as a communication device.
Yeah, off or disconnected might be the better way to say it, off or disconnected while in
I
school.
mean, you can turn the Wi-Fi and you can put it in airplane mode and you can turn the Wi-Fi off on a watch.
Right, and, or like I said, there's school mode in several of them too, like the Gab and, the other, like, the one that a lot of kids use, can't remember the name.
The young kids, but the older kids are gonna have like an Apple Watch, which does not have that.
Say
Yeah.
turned off.
I know, but Susan doesn't want to turn the watches off.
Because they may be using
And
it
this
for
is the only
watches.
watch I ever
So
use.
also-
No, I get
And
it.
if I get a phone call, which I should silence it, it's gonna
I would
ring.
interpret communication device as like, if they didn't shut off their texting or phone call piece, like that's.
Yeah, that's true. If you can shut off the communication
Yeah, we didn't say shut off your.
without shutting
Mm-hmm.
off.
Watch.
Tracker, your, but it's just.
And I think some of this comes down to making sure that educators know what the intent is, so that the enforcement is the way that we want it to be. Yeah.
All right. Any other things in either handbook that people found? All right. Any other
School one too.
Yeah, I'll change it.
Okay.
changes that, besides the communication device thing? Is that the only other thing we wanted to add or change?
My page 5,
That's what I was gonna say. Maria wanted to change something on page 5, so I don't know.
my family's thing,
Yeah,
turning to
Yeah.
the native country.
It's kind of not necessary because all the rest of it already tells you can't be out for more than 10 days without.
I guess how would you, what do you want to change it? How do you want to change it? I guess is the question.
Remove it totally, because honestly, it's already part of it. I think I can understand why you have it there,
Yeah, but
because
you can't
there are
remove, you
probably
can't remove it.
people.
You can't remove it totally, because people are gonna say, I'm not going for a vacation. I'm going
Okay.
for
So if it's not,
business.
so just add it up here to the after vacations or for family, business purposes.
I don't know.
Well, parents are strongly discouraging from taking their students out of school.
yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
even
I
have to
mean,
be called
I
a
think you could even
vacation.
leave out vacations.
It's just from taking their students
out of school while school
during
is
the
in
school,
session.
while school's in session.
Yeah.
Don't call it a vacation. So whatever your reason is, it's not okay. Unless it fits one of the excused
And then
criteria.
and then what follows applies to either case, either a vacation or a family excuse. So a written request for trip absences, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think if we just don't call it a vacation in the first place.
So families removing their children out of school for personal or family business during the school year must adhere to the provisions of the school committee. That's it?
You can call it on a business and/or personal trip.
Okay,
You don't have to call it a vacation trip, you can call it a personal trip.
She didn't call it any trip. How did you say it?
at the top, from taking business or personal trips, right?
Well, the problem you have, like, in reading this, is that you say it's discouraged, but then we're like, please put in a request. I almost think you need to, if you're gonna make a change, start with, time out of school can be harmful to a child's progress and success in school. Because the main purpose of this was like, don't expect us to suddenly, because people come in and say, I'm gonna be out for 2 weeks. My kid needs their math, their English, their blah, 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 blah.
It's like, no.
So if
Everything.
you start off with, time out of school can be harmful to a child's, because nobody listens.
Yeah, so if you
Go on
start-
vacation anyways.
If you start with that paragraph, if you start that paragraph with time out of school, and then you take the sentence that says parents are strongly discouraged, the first sentence of that paragraph, parents are strongly discouraged from, and instead of say taking vacations, saying removing their students from school for any reason while school is in session. To me, that because other than sickness, I guess maybe.
Yeah, you gotta be careful, or.
So
or funeral,
maybe we
or-
say for family, business, or vacation purposes or something.
For personal, family, business, or vacation purposes.
Yeah.
Or just on business or personal.
Yeah,
Because
business
a vacation is personal.
or travel purposes. I don't want to say
Yeah,
personal
travel.
because I
Yeah, yeah,
worry that
travel.
personal implies religious holidays aren't accepted, which we do not want to do. So I think business or travel purposes may better encompass what we mean.
That will cover it.
I'm just reading before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you wanna-
You have a moment of silence for a second?
Yeah.
I'm
So-
trying to read the policy too and see what it's linking to.
Parents are strong.
There's nothing in, I read our policy.
Oh, it's very vague. in the
There's nothing
policy.
in our policy that calls out, travel to a native country. And there's nothing in our policy that I think conflicts with the potential rephrasing.
Do you want to read aloud?
Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah.
So I would like to start with the sentence of time out of school can be harmful to a
Yes.
child's progress, growth, and success in school. Good. Parents are strongly discouraged from removing students from school while it's in session. Period. If a student accompanies their parent, I changed the word to if, because if they're doing it, this
Yeah.
needs to happen. If a student accompanies their parent/guardian on a business and/or vacation trip, the student upon return is responsible for contacting their teacher to discuss missed work and make up procedures. The teacher is not obligated to provide assignments while the student is not in school. Upon return to school from an absence, the student is required to present to the attendance teacher, we don't really have an attendance teacher, or dean a dated note signed by the parent or guardian indicating the reasons for the absence, and that's because we have to decide if it's excused or not excused.
You're in the high school one.
No,
No, I'm
Because
in the
there's no
family
mention to,
student one.
there's no mention to Dean here, is there?
there
There
is.
isn't there.
Yeah, it is, it's there.
It's there.
It says or Dean, so that could cover
Oh,
that.
Because
the
it
last
covers all of
paragraph.
them.
Yeah.
And then I think that the following paragraph could be, so you could remove the families wishing to return sentence, except I would say, all, families must adhere to the provisions of the school committee policy in this handbook. If we wanted, we could still link the handbook, but I think otherwise we
Well,
could delete
and
that
even
paragraph.
if that's the case, that upon return, we don't need a signed note from the parent, because we're gonna already be calling them anyways, because they've been in school for X amount of days.
Right.
You could go right for, families must adhere, like you could get rid of all that, and then just, your phone is ringing.
I just wanted to
Put it
say,
in school
I
mode,
just
will you?
wanted to understand how this could be a
Families must
distraction.
adhere to the provisions of the school committee policy and this handbook,
Yeah,
Right,
period.
yep.
period.
Right.
I think that that's much better. Thank you.
I'm gonna
Everybody,
cut and paste this and send it all to you as an email.
I
Is
appreciate
this
that.
the same that's in the high school one too? Or is it even in the high
No,
school?
the high school is very different because their attendance is even more,
Strict.
yeah. I don't want a note because you should have been in school. This is what I'm saying, this is why I wanted to put together a handbook committee because like some of this stuff is kind of, antiquated. We'll get rid of that.
all right.
And then,
I think we know the intent
Yep.
of what you're looking for, so Linda can kind of concoct the paragraph and email it to you after the fact, just to give it one
Okay.
final blessing, and then go from there.
And just
Thank
to
you.
move on, can we approve, well, vote to approve with suggested
Pending
changes?
the two
yeah,
suggested
Two
the
changes.
suggested
recommended
changes, and then,
guys, if you could.
yeah, and then as
Okay.
long as you, yeah. Okay,
All right,
all right, so we have to approve the two different ones separately, so
okay.
there's the District 1, right?
All right, so I recommend, I make a motion. Are we ready for it?
I believe so.
Yes.
I move that we approve the 2025-26 student handbook as presented with the amendments.
With suggested changes, yeah.
I'll second.
Everybody comfortable with that motion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0.
Okay, and I move that we approve the 2025-26 student handbook and Chelmsford High School addendum with the recommended changes.
Second.
Okay. All right, any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we have one more handbook.
We have one more, hopefully this one won't be too controversial. This is the approval of the staff handbook for 25-26. Diane Carey had put this together, and it has very few changes in it. I just laid them out on the cover page. There's really nothing of substance. Dates were updated to 25 instead of 24. The pages had to be renumbered because of the table of contents and the way the different things laid out. There was a renaming of one of the policies that came from the attorney, and they added a hyperlink to the civil rights procedure that's already posted on our website. The only thing that we didn't have currently is the new contracts that we just executed. I got to get them up to the new website, and then once they are, the hyperlinks at the back of this just have to redirect them to the new contracts. But it's not a substantive update, so there was really nothing substantive in this. It's just minor little updates for the year. So we'd recommend this for approval.
Any questions on the employee handbook?
I just didn't look for the word paraeducators versus,
We changed it.
we
I
did
changed
change
that
it.
last
Okay,
time, I think,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I changed it in the contract document throughout this year.
Okay.
So we're good on that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Anything else on the employee handbook? Okay, take a motion.
I move that we approve the updated employee handbook as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. All righty.
Oh, we're flying.
Oh, my goodness,
All
right?
right. This was a kind of big meeting. We had a lot of stuff to get through tonight. Next item is number 9. This is the private school approval process and then a request for consideration. I know a few of us have had some discussions about this. So at some point last winter, Linda and I were approached by individuals associated with a new school venture that wanted to open up in town and operate as a private school. At that point in time, they were kind of just putting us on notice. They had given us a draft proposal. I think they had tried to open the school similarly in a neighboring community a year or so prior and just didn't get legs, so it didn't open. But they shared that proposal with us and talked about how they were looking at a couple of different locations that they needed to kind of finalize. But they wanted to give us a heads up and talk a little bit about what the approval process is. So when a school does want to operate within the confines of the town, they do need approval of the school committee, even though they're a private school, to basically say that the type of education that they're going to be providing is similar to the education that the kids would be provided in the public school. Your current policy and even the MASC policy is pretty vague with regard to kind of the approval process for this. DESI has a checklist that they suggest you look through to make sure the different criteria are met. So I took the application that the group had given us, because at this point in time, they have, it's my understanding, secured a location, but they're still going through the process of having the space being kind of renovated and retrofitted, so they don't have the necessary permits and things like that to operate the school yet. That's one of the key elements that they have to ultimately provide to us before you can take action on it. But I went through their current proposal and each of the different criteria based on the DESI checklist that they need to meet, to give you a stance for what's the criteria, how does the group propose to meet it, and then have they met the criteria or not. So I thought we don't do this often, this doesn't come up often in communities, so I thought this was the easiest way of just kind of going through and to do it. So the first element that they have to reach is a clearly defined population to be served. They do outline that within their proposal, so that criteria was met. There's a criteria that talks about the physical plant, the safety issues, and how they're going to handle health issues within the school. They laid out how they were going to do that, but this is one of the criteria that they haven't met because they do not have the necessary permits to open up as a school yet. So if they had all the permits, they would meet this criteria. They have to meet certain curriculum standards. So in their proposal, they laid out all the different curriculum that they propose to use. So in my opinion, they've met this criteria. Educational materials, they have to talk about what, again, they're going to use, again, curriculum-wise, manipulative-wise, things along those lines. So again, in my opinion, they've met that criteria. School staff, they have to talk about who they're actually going to have working with the kids. They have to make sure that they're going to comply with different ratios, that they're going to be Corey checked, all things along those lines. Excuse me, and based on what they submitted in their application, they appear to have met that criteria. The sixth one is the administration of the school. Just talks about who's actually the governance structure, who's in charge, who the board is, and they provided that and met that criteria. DESI has certain records requirements that are required. They had to talk about how they can be in compliance with different laws, with student data. If people come asking for records, how long they're going to maintain them, very similar to what we are also required to keep in the school system. The only thing at this point, when we met with the individuals, what they mentioned to us is they were looking to open up one grade level per year. So they were looking to enroll incoming kindergarten or first grade students for this coming school year, a cohort of up to 20, and then each year they were going to try to grow by the 20 students. So in the application, eventually they are going to try to get up to grade 8. When they actually have students in the building that hit grade 6 through 8, they are required to have a hazing policy, and that's something that would have to be on record with us. They didn't have that within their packet, I believe, because they probably weren't counting on enrolling grade 6 to 8 kids at this time. That's a pretty easy one to clear up, but they technically didn't meet that criteria, so that was one that was noted for follow-up. Under nursing and health services, they have to talk about how they're going to address the different student discipline, different screening eligibility, health care for the students, including guidance and counseling support. This is one criteria that they didn't meet because they are not proposing at this point having a dedicated guidance counselor like we have in the buildings that would deal with student issues. Again, if I'm them, I could see their perspective. If they're only going to have up to 20 kids in a particular year and they have enough adults, that may be their way of not having the counselor. But that could be an area that you want to inquire a little bit further on. Special education, the 9th criteria, they do have to just ensure that they're going to comply with special education rules and laws and regulations, and they do indicate that they are going to do so, so that's not an issue. Financial report, they didn't fully provide the typical budgeting financials that you would see, profit loss statements, balance sheets, things along those lines. So that's an area where we could request additional information just to make sure that they are fiscally solvent and able to operate. I think this would be because you don't want to have a family enroll in the school and all of a sudden they go 1 to 2 months in and the student doesn't have a place to go. The 11th criteria is around student learning time, and they do propose a day which meets DESI's guidelines, so they have met that particular criteria. The 12th one was around student performance assessment. They had to talk about the different tools that they're going to use to evaluate student growth and progress monitor. They have provided sufficient detail for that, so that criteria was met. And then notification of a private school. So if they ever were to close, there are certain things that they have to provide to families and to DESE and to the school district. And they indicated that they would do so. So they met that criteria. So when you look at all of the criteria as far as the program approval is concerned, they've met all, most criteria. The first one is probably the biggest one around physical plant. They just haven't provided us with the certificate of occupancy and different permits to operate the building. So that would be one I would recommend the school committee would want to follow up on. And they'd have to provide that after they have those certificates. You couldn't grant approval prior to that. You could also request, on my back page here, financial support and some financial evidence of their ability to operate. Just get it out of the way now, the hazing policy, have them give us some certification that they are going to comply with the hazing rules. And then you could prod, if you wanted to, a little bit on the guidance and counseling program to just make sure that the kids would be supported like they are in our school. Those are really the 4 elements that are kind of missing or at least are open for review. So those, if you agree, would be things that we could potentially message back to them that they would have to include in the final packet that would come before you. And then aside from that, you certainly could go to the site and do a site visit. We could do a group site visit, you could do an individual site visit if you just wanted to put your eyes on it. And then behind my little summary, I just included the checklist from DESE, just so you could see the different elements. But that was my first kind of pass at this, to just give you kind of a starting point to work from.
I guess another concern is their application is based upon enrolling grade 1 students.
Yep.
Now they're advertising 2 to 5. So what I need some clarification on because, correct me if we said yes, grade 1, that doesn't necessarily mean we're saying, you can do all the way up to middle school. Does every year they have to come to, if they're going to add another grade level a year, would they have to come to us for grade 2? And if that's the case, we need to know what their plan is.
Right.
Yeah, to me, that contradicts the need for them to have a clear target population,
Right,
which is one of the requirements.
right. So so that means they don't really meet that first criteria. Obviously, criteria 2, they, if they don't have all the permits for occupancy and all that, you can't open a school.
So, I mean, when they messaged us, they were originally talking about just the grade 1.
Right.
And that's what they had talked about. That's what their application supports.
Right.
So certainly that's another thing, because I have seen the public postings also. That's another thing we could ask them for. They could change their final application and actually ask for approval of up to 1 to 5, and that would be what you have to consider. But I can highlight that one as well.
Okay,
Yeah, I think they need to make that clear.
yeah,
And I know they have enrollment projections in the sense that they, in this, say 20 first grade students. But I would want to hear if that is, it says they did share, I saw a laid out specific admissions criteria. But I think having a sense of like a timeline for when they will be making a final decision about their population and enrolling students would be also helpful information to have, particularly if they are going to be shifting the target number of students in each grade, if they are opening it up to additional grades.
Yeah, I think based on the application that they gave us, they've already missed the dates when they were supposed to
Right.
kind of notify families, so.
which makes me wonder if they haven't got this done and this done, are they even viable to open in the fall? Is this something?
I don't know.
That maybe they need to think about maybe next fall and just get all the ducks in a row beforehand.
I'm really concerned for the parents who may be applying and being told the school is going to open.
Right.
When there's certainly no guarantee of it all, and how many families have they enrolled whose children are expecting to be going there at the end of August?
Right.
It's a month from now.
Yeah.
Right.
And the financial plan, I think, is extremely important, because, if we're going to approve something that's not viable, then we're doing a disservice to the public, period. So I think that is.
Well, does anyone disagree with the four elements I laid out on the back page?
I don't
The
disagree.
physical plant, the financial support, the hazing policy, and the guidance?
I would just add the admissions target.
No, I can add that, but if you agree with these
Yeah.
four, I could submit a copy of this report that we put together for them to say, here's where we're at. We think you've met these. You certainly have to provide more information on these four to make sure they're covered in your final proposal, as well as your proposal specifically says you're targeting 20 kids at grade 1, but your advertisements are saying you're doing now grades 1 to 5. So what is your real target audience for the fall? Make sure that that's included in the application. And then truly, I mean, they don't have to tell us, but like, where are they at this point as far as enrollment's concerned? How many kids, what grade levels? Because this really, if they're going to do this, in my opinion, they've got to get this back complete by the first meeting in August for you to really consider it. Because if it waits until the 20th, that's a week out from school. I mean, that's not going to really give them enough time to do anything. Or to Susan's point, if a child has actually enrolled and they think this is going to open, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. I don't know like what their drop dead date is for letting people know.
Yes, and
So I can communicate those four, and then also the grade level certainty we need from them.
okay. And a question generally, after they get going on this this whole thing, are we monitoring this?
No. This is basically like an initial approval.
Okay,
If I were them, what I would be doing is submitting an application for us that's going to cover the extent of what they're asking for. I mean, at this point, if they're only asking to grow from grades, say, even 1 to 5, they could just have their application process be grades 1 to 5. That's at least going to cover the next 5 years for them. As they start to approach middle school, they could come back and say, we want to extend our grades. But there's technically nothing stopping them for asking for the approval from grades 1 to 8 at this time. If they want to, they just have to provide a lot more information on, curriculum and things like that. But their original focus when they talked to Linda and I was just grade 1. So I was a little surprised when I saw the ads.
Okay, so everybody agrees they need, we need more information.
Yes, please.
Kind of a related thing, in starting to look at this, I did look at our policy and I gave you a copy. Our policy is very, 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 very vague. I also put the MASC policy, which is a little bit more specific, and this is what MASC is saying is kind of what we're following, but maybe to consider, maybe making a change, maybe not tonight, but in the future, in case it ever happens again,
yeah, it's very, very general.
and it does reference the checklist that we're using, so, again, our policy is, it still fits because it just says that they have to meet certain criteria, but doesn't really.
It basically just kicks it to DESI's
Right.
policy. So
It didn't even do that, so our policy doesn't even do that. It just says it has to equal our public school and thoroughness. That's it, so that's, and then the MASC one does, I think I said you that. So just something to consider maybe in a future meeting, just to kind of,
It's much more comprehensive.
right. So that if somebody ever did want to, and they, okay, I gotta do this, this, if they were to look up our policy ahead of time and say, oh, I have to,
would you like me to kind of queue up this change
yeah,
for like a future meeting?
Yeah.
Just to be
Please.
able to look. I mean, it's substantially the same.
It's what we're
as
doing.
What we're doing.
yes,
I know.
exactly.
So it's not going to affect, I don't want people thinking
No.
we're going to try to change a policy to affect this
That,
application.
I was the same way, and it's
Yeah.
exactly what we just discussed, and it's the
Right.
exact same checklist that you just
It
posted in the
is.
packet.
But it's much more
Because
clear.
the MSC policy also is followed by the checklist, which I
Yeah.
didn't put on here because it was more
Right.
paper. But just, when I,
Substantial changes, the school must seek renewal or approval.
right, exactly.
All that, I think that
So,
that's.
so
really
maybe
important
cue
to
that
put
up
in
for
there.
next meeting or something.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because it was a bit scary to read an article that basically said there was a new private school in town and there was an article
Yeah,
about this in the newspaper.
right, I remember.
It's
All right.
posted on many of the town social media platforms.
Right, right.
I'll convey the report and the request for more detailed response to these four as well as the grade levels. And then if any, I'll try to also just figure out like where they're at for the fall and can communicate that back to you. if it is something where they are going to try to advance for the fall, I'll also urge them to get the full application in next week so that we can actually look at it at the 5th when we get together. Is there any interest of committee members to go visit the space at all?
I would say yes. I would like
You'd
to.
wanna-
Yeah, I'd want to go see what they were.
I would want it
Before
before
I-
approving.
exactly,
So once they have otherwise met the requirements, to me, that would be a step to approval.
Okay. All right.
All right, I believe we have one last item.
We do. This is just the personnel report from the month of June. Again, detailing, if you see everyone with an effective date of 8/25, that's our first day of school. So these are our new hires coming to the district, teachers, bunch of specialists, we have some nurses, psychologists. So hiring is going very well for the current school year. We had a handful of resignations on the second page. And then we had a few people whose retirement dates were effective June 30th. So we knew these people were retiring in June, but this just kind of closes out their service. At the very end, we just had a couple of current staff members who transferred to different positions within the district. Just a little tally for you to kind of show you where we're at. And when we get to the first meeting in August, I'll give you a report of all of our open positions. But overall, we're doing very good for the hiring for the fall.
Any questions on the personnel report? No? Right. All right, any liaison reports?
No?
Not this time.
Superintendent already mentioned it, but in terms of building committee, we did get 6 proposals from designers, and we are currently going through those, and, we have to kind of look at all the different criteria, and then at the end of August, we'll meet with MSBA and cut it down to 2 or 3, and then interview them, and so we're definitely moving along, it's getting there. I think we meet again next month as a whole committee.
Yeah, the whole committee will meet, I think it's the 3rd Thursday.
Yeah.
In August. We took July off. And then, the week of the 25th of August is when we have the first designer selection panel. That's when we talk about all 6 firms that actually submitted. And with our discussion with the MSBA panel, we narrow it down to either 2 or 3 to invite in for interviews. So then that happens 2 weeks later. So we'd actually interview the individuals, and then from our perspective, it's myself, Dennis, and Paul Cohen, the 3 town reps. And then there were 13 MSBA reps, so we're a little bit outnumbered.
A lot of people.
We're gonna have to be on our game that day. But no, that's the way the process plays out. So hopefully by that first meeting in September, when we meet with the designer selection panel, we'll have the designer on board. And then the contract's a standard contract, so the contract's executed within a couple of days. And the work will really get going.
And a related note, the South Road project is all good to go, right?
Yeah, so that's good
Approved
to go.
project.
We got all the final paperwork on that. So town meeting did approve the additional funding for that project. It does seem like a big amount of money that they approved, but the town's portion in the end of what is going to be spent would be similar to what they were going to spend originally. It's just that we have to actually bond for the full amount of the project, which is closer to 4 million. However, the town's only going to end up paying 2 million. It's about half of that. But instead of just showing 2 million on the books, you actually have to show the full amount. So that was appropriated. All the final paperwork was signed. MSBA approved everything. So the designer is actually in process, getting that ready to go. The goal is to get that project out to bid later on this fall, early winter, because of the lead time involved. Because there's a lot of relocation of the existing solar panels. There are new solar panels that have to be added. So we need to get that queued up so that it can happen next summer. That has to be a summer project. So we'll keep you in the loop on that, but all the paperwork is done and the design is underway.
And the elevators got approved too.
Yeah, so those are also moving into the design phase, and those, I think they were hoping to get those out to bid at the end of the summer, because there's almost a year's lead time to get parts on some of these elevators. So that is also going to be a hopeful project for next summer.
Yeah, elevator's tough.
Elevators are very tough.
It's the old ones.
Yeah, there's not a lot of companies
Yeah.
that really do the work on them.
Absolutely.
The servicing is very difficult, and for us, we only have 1 elevator in a school. So we can't afford to be down an elevator with staff and students who require it. So it has to be a summer project for us. And of course, every single school district who's putting an elevator in wants to do it during the summer. They don't want to do it during the school year. So there's a window we have to kind of hit to be able to get that done. But no, elevators are expensive, not a lot of people work on them, and you're kind of tied to whatever group bids the project.
You can't do it during the school year, because not only is it disruptive, it wouldn't be in operation. And
Right.
therefore, those kids who,
Right.
anyone
Right.
in the building who needs it
Anyone.
would not be able to access the building
We wouldn't be in
for
compliance.
however long it takes, right?
Right. And an elevator, when it goes down, it takes,
Yeah.
at least 6 to 8 weeks to get a new elevator in, so it's
Yeah.
a lot of downtime.
Absolutely. We have other projects ongoing during the summer, right?
A lot.
The entries and all of that. Well, you'll probably provide us some update at some point in
You can
August.
take a tour.
That's right.
Go for a tour,
At the end
okay.
of summer.
Yeah,
Sounds
there's, we will certainly give you an update in August. The 5 build-outs of the secure entryways, they're all underway. They're in different, actually, Center hasn't started yet. They're holding off Center till the very end in case you hear anything because of the summer school being over there. So, and that one's probably the most intrusive because we're also having to move the office doors, we're having to move the fire doors. So that one's being held off until the very last second that they can. But I was over at Harrington and Parker, and they're all already framed. They're just waiting for inspections before the stuff goes up. So those should be in good shape for the start of the school year all around. But I'll give you a full report.
That's terrific.
All right, any new items?
Any update when you can on numbers for students enrollment?
Yeah, I can try
Yeah.
that for the next meeting for you if you'd like.
Particularly if we did ever wind up with any new students from that new complex.
Yeah. Are they moving in yet?
I don't know.
Have they started moving people in over there? I don't know.
We're
yet.
not seeing people registering from the address.
Wow.
So I don't know what the status of the people moving in are. Supposedly at least the townhouses, when you drive onto the property on the left, those were supposedly leasing as of May 1st.
They
So
look complete. I drove in one day just to look
Yeah.
around. They look complete.
I don't know, but we're not getting inundated yet.
Okay. This is good.
My only thing was, and it came up in, and I'm stealing Maria's thunder, in the surveys for cell phones, and it comes up in with the handbook, the AI
Yep.
policy, if we could maybe get a working group together to get the policy subcommittee, maybe sit down with Bill. I know I sent him a couple of possibles.
Yep.
From very, very general to very, very specific, and I know there's a working group going, working on AI, even if some of the
Yes.
members from that
Okay.
would, and maybe try to come up,
Yeah,
because it did come up in all of
Not stealing my thunder at all. I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
very important thing for us to deal with.
But I know people work
I-
behind the scenes. I know this group's going, looking at it.
I may have some resources to pass along to the policy working group as well. My new organization for my day job is doing a lot of work this summer around AI in schools and is bringing in some experts to lead workshops and things like that that I'll be able to attend. So I hope to be able to have some stuff to share.
Great, perfect.
Great.
All right, anything else? Well, this is a short meeting, so I think
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.